And we should be good to go. All right. We are live here with Synth from Skycoin. And Synth, before we get started, before we get into all the fun stuff, I need to know, what kind of tea are you making? Sorry, guys, for you guys watching out there.
I'm making
Gojis. Nice.
Yeah.
You're in Shanghai right now, so I'm curious what kind of tea you're drinking and what the best stuff is over there. But glad you can share that with us. But anyway, for anybody watching here, thank you for tuning in. I'm with Synth here from Skycoin. We're gonna dig into some really interesting topics. Want to dig into background of Synth, of how Skycoin operates, what Skycoin is, and then want to dabble a little bit into the crypto market in general. So I'm here with the one and only legendary Synth. And Synth, I have actually done a little bit of research on you. I've been reading some blog posts on you, watching some interviews on you, and man, I've had a good time. I mean, you are quite the guy. You're quite a legend in the crypto space. So welcome, and I'm super thrilled to have you on here. Thanks a lot.
I hope it's not the blog post I'm thinking of. There was like one guy that was saying that I was like a James Bond supervillain or something.
Yeah. I actually read a post about how you were talking about Darwinism and how it's like the progression to Satanism or something like that. I don't know if you remember that, but if you want to explain yourself, now's a good chance, so we can kick it off with that if you'd like.
Yeah. So I was doing troll. Sometimes I'm bored and I troll too much, and I made this joke about this insider trading chat room. It was basically, there was a public chat room and Sudo made it private, so I was joking about it, and they were in there like posting cat memes all day. And then someone took the voice recording or like edited it and edited it so it made it sound really serious. I was like laughing during the whole recording. I remember I went on the channel and it was a joke, and then someone posted on Twitter and he said, "Oh my God, Synth admits pseudo insider trading group," and then he's tweeting it at the SEC, like SEC on Twitter, and then someone wrote a blog article saying that Synth was reported, Skycoin was reported and under investigation by the SEC for insider trading allegations, and this whole thing was like a joke about the kitty cat trading chat room. And I don't know if and then other blog posts published it, and then CNN, which is the fake CNN, is Crypto News Network, has like these hot Russian girls with like their breasts pumping out, like popping out of their suits, like reading this thing about like SEC investigating Skycoin for insider trading, and we're on the channel just like laughing our asses off. It was about like the trading group.
So what did they find? What was the ruling?
And then someone posted the SEC regulatory letter saying that cats are not a security and that cats are not an investment. And it was like the SEC regulatory letter, published on January 33rd or something, that cats are not a security, and please do not advertise cats as an investment. And so they created like a fake regulatory letter for the SEC about kittycash.com, and then Reddit was like upvoting it and like shit talking, fighting us, and all the people fighting us didn't know they were being trolled.
Wow.
And so there's just so many idiots fighting all these coins. Like, it's a scam. It's a scam. It's a scam. Everyone's a scam. Everything's a scam. And then at the time, people about yachts. So we were trolling some of the just like the idiots on Reddit, basically, and they believe all of this shit. Like, I gotta tell them. And someone, I went to Israel and I got some pictures of soldiers, and someone posted it on Reddit, and it was me with like 2 Israeli soldiers in the territories, and they posted it and said Synth joined ISIS.
Oh no!
And then all of the Redditors were upvoting it, and then one of them was like, "Hey, wait, why do they have Hebrew on their guns?" So did you get contacted by the FBI? That's a good punk. No. Search Synth joins ISIS.
Synth joins ISIS. Skycoin goes global. It's the new funding paradigm for ISIS. You're gonna see that on a headline tomorrow, like on Twitter, Reddit, and Bitcoin talking everywhere. Well, that's cool. Yeah. We'll have to get some of those links and put them in the show notes just for kicks for everybody out there watching. But anyway, couldn't be happier to have you on, Synth. Thanks a lot for joining. Really appreciate your time. And obviously you are a legend in the Bitcoin community. You were kind of one of the earlier developers when Bitcoin was being started years back. And I kind of want to dabble into that first. I want to really just touch on kind of your background in general, you as a person, right? How did you even get into developing? How did you get into cryptocurrency? How did you get into the community in general? Like, what were you doing before you got into crypto? And then how did you get into it?
I was in college and I spent like 8 years just sitting at a library, like studying Hilbert spaces for computational chemistry and just sitting in a library, like doing math, basically.
Yeah.
And then after college, I did like hedge fund stuff, and I worked at this company called Market Psych Advisors, and it's like behavioral finance hedge funds, a lot of trading, and I was doing a bunch of other things. And I did consulting for like 12 different companies, and I quickly learned like, how the system worked. And all these companies like that are absolutely incompetent. I shouldn't even say anything about it, but
no, please do.
I
want to hear it.
I'm gonna get in trouble. But you would just see like this company making like $20 million a year, and it's just like a train wreck. It's just so anyways, I did consulting, and then I ended up I was working on my video game. I made this game called Gnome Scroll, which was one of the first voxel games. It was even before I think we started even before Minecraft. And you had like these little voxels, and you could like mine things and plant trees and things like that. I had like a planet and was simulating like an atmosphere, and there's like a sun in orbit, and we were simulating like how the light diffuses the atmosphere, so it's like a sunset and sunrise.
Nice.
And I was building this multiplayer game, but for the last 10 years I was in all these hacker groups, and there's this thing called and this is how I got into Bitcoin. There's these mailing lists. This guy DJB made this thing called Mixmaster, and if you want to send an email to someone, you take like 3 servers. They have a PGP public key. You encrypt a message for the last server, and then you encrypt that message for the second from last server, and you encrypt that message from the third from last, and so on. And so and you send your message to the first email server. It decrypts it, and then once it's decrypted, it knows what the next server to send it to, and then once he decrypts it, and he sends it to the next one. So it's like an onion where you decrypt the first layer of the onion, and then forward it, and the next layer the next person decrypts the next layer of the onion, and next layer.
Yeah.
And so there's these anonymous email mailing lists that are on this Mixmaster network, and you have to be invited in. It's like really annoying to get into, and the people would change their names like every day, or one guy, or like 5 people would post under the same name, or one guy would post under 3 names, or one guy only uses one name but he changes it every 2 months, or he gives the names to his friend. So there's multiple people like on different names. You don't know who the hell is who unless you know them personally. So there's this like really weird. It was like before Tor. This was like the darknet before Tor, and that's where a lot of the like Chomcash this hash cache, a lot of the precursors to Bitcoin were basically just discussed and were built inside of this sort of anonymous real mailer network. And it's sort of like, you remember Usenet?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've used Usenet.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's sort of like that, but then Usenet moved to email, and then they had the mailing list.
Okay.
So you have sort of like newsletter, but mailing lists.
Okay.
And so I heard about Bitcoin like 5 or 6 times before I started working on it. Every month I get another email. Hey, look at Bitcoin. Hey, look at Bitcoin. Hey, do you see this? Do you see this? You know anything about this? Hey, does this work? Should I buy this? Does this work? What is this? Or I don't know what to do with this. You might want this. So they kept messaging me about it. And the third time, I actually installed Bitcoin 3 times and forgot about it. And then the third time I was on the computer, like trying to install it. I'm like, wait, I already have a Bitcoin directory. What? Why do I have this already installed? I'm like, and then I remembered, wait, I've installed this 4 or 5 times already. I forgot about it. Because so then I'm trying to install Bitcoin again, and it doesn't compile. And then I did some bug fixes, and I had to. Satoshi was working on SourceForge and compiling on Windows, and all these people would send in these patches, and he would merge them in, and then he would post the patches, and he would compile it on his computer.
Sure.
But then he didn't check that it compiled under Linux, and he broke it, and then I had to go and like do the fixes, and then mail in the diffs, and I just sort of got involved in the background, and then because the financial services background, I got pulled in basically to audit, like, hey, does this work? Does this make any sense? Is this protocol going to Is this monopoly money? Does the algorithm do what they say it does? How many, things like that.
Yeah.
And the financial people, they lost interest in Bitcoin after Gox, and they're like, it's a fad, it's going away. Sure. But after Gox imploded, they sort of got scared and ran off.
Yeah.
And but I kept going because what I did with the hedge funds is I just plot the user curve. So I'd say like, okay, the number of users is growing at 10% per month, and it's been growing 10% per month for 8 years now. Sure. Okay, I'll buy that, and because it's just going to keep going at the same rate it's going. So
what was this at the time? Like, were you involved, and did you talk with people like Hal Finney, Nick Szabo? I mean, Satoshi maybe directly through email or whatnot through the usernames, but did you interact with those guys, and did you develop with those guys, or did you not know?
So
was it kind of anonymous?
You don't know on the anonymous remailer network. Like if I want to take your username and start posting things that I'll have a different public key, but I can take your username or whatever name you want, or sign your email with whatever signature you want. Okay. And no one, you can put inside. I didn't even know how to use PGP, so I got on the network, but I didn't know how to sign my messages. Okay. So it's like you could like impersonate me, but other people had like PGP signatures that you could verify and things like that. But anyways, the software was a pain in the ass. So I talked to these people. I think Satoshi was the project manager on Bitcoin. I don't think he was the lead developer. I think there was a team, and I think Bitcoin was in development in some form for almost a decade. Okay. And I know that the people who were writing the software were on Linux, and I know that. And the person who was compiling the software was using Microsoft Visual Studios, and it was on Windows. And so I think the maintainer who had the screen names and was releasing Bitcoin onto SourceForge, right, that guy used SVN. And later on, Gavin came on, and they moved it to GitHub, and now it uses Git. But for a while, it was just SVN, and you had to email them like diffs. And then he would merge in the diffs, and it's just I do software development and use Git, and it's really easy. But when you get into this weird software they were using, it's just like, what the hell? How did this happen? Yeah. So I talked to those people, and I gave like some feedback. Oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. Blah 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 blah. And but I was never really, I don't know who the hell I was talking to. Yeah. And then there was a point like it was very funny because there was a bug in glibc where you could send someone a URL request and it would trigger a buffer overflow and take over the computer. And like all the remailers were vulnerable to this thing, and then they like shut down all the remailer networks, and everyone had to like reinstall Linux with this other thing that wasn't glibc, and they're all paranoid about the backdoors. And that really shut down and then they just went quiet, and I haven't heard much from them. And then it kind of I don't know what the hell.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, being involved in kind of the early days and kind of watching that growth curve, 10%, 10%, 10%, right? And just seeing that happen, what do you think actually was the catalyst for that? Like, what actually drove that growth? Like, in your opinion, in the early days? Because I feel like it kind of is a recurring theme with different altcoins. And I think people watching would be interested in, like, how did you break that down? Like, how did you actually do that? It's just high level, you know?
The first year, there's this group, and they left. The second year was this group, and third year was a separate group, and fourth year was a third group. And remember, the only thing you can do in Bitcoin is check your balance and send money. Bitcoin only does two things. Sure. It's not a fun software part. It's not like World of Warcraft where you're going to people who spend like 20,000 hours like grinding, like, oh, you got to go and do raids or something, right?
Build an actual Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get bored. Oh yeah, this is cool. Digital money's cool, but you get bored with it, and then a new group comes in, and a new group comes in, and a new group comes in, and a new group comes in every year. And so when Bitcoin was hit $1, these people had bought in, like, got 1 million Bitcoin for free, like Jason Calacanis, and he was running Mt. Gox, and before he sold it to Carpels. Yeah. And he would see people selling Bitcoin at $1, and he's like, they're selling at $1. I got to sell before them. And Jason, he did Stellar later, but and then Ripple and then Stellar. But he was selling all his Bitcoin like $1 because he's like, they're selling their Bitcoin. I have to sell now. I have to sell before they dump. I got to dump before they dump. Yeah. So you had people like dumping hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin for under $1, trying to get out. Yeah. Before the other people, because Bitcoin had never hit $1, and it was not $1 it didn't have any monetary value for like 6 or 8 years at that point.
Sure.
So when it actually became worth something, it was monopoly money. This is a bubble.
Yeah.
And they're dumping it and dumping it and dumping it. And what I saw too was like the price went up like $30, and then it crashed down to $5. And I would see some idiots that I work with, and they would buy it at 30, and then it would drop to 5, and they would sell at 5, and then it goes to 1,000, and they buy back in at like 300, and then they sell at 200, and they buy in like the week before Mt. Gox collapsed. And the week before Mt. Gox collapsed, these people who every time they buy at the top and sell at the bottom, every time. And whenever they were selling and panicking and calling me and like, Bitcoin's dead, I have to sell everything, I'm gonna lose everything, I gotta sell now. I just dropped. Whenever they did that, I was like, okay, I gotta buy.
Yeah.
Because all their trades lose money.
Yeah.
So, a funny story about this guy who if he just held the Bitcoin, he would have had $600 million, but he turned $600 million into $15 million through bad trading, and then he thinks he's a trading genius.
Oh.
And then he's trying to collect money from investors to invest their money for them.
Oh man!
Such a good trading genius.
You can feel free to expose or give a name, but I don't want to get you in trouble. But no, that's fascinating. That's pretty interesting. And the reason I'm asking, and we'll get to more of this later, I obviously want to get into Skycoin, but I'm kind of curious how that relates today, because you see a lot of that today, right? It goes up to 20,000, goes all the way back down to 5,000. We still are kind of at a low, right? And I'm curious your thoughts on the market conditions, market dynamics. We could get into that now. We could get into that later. I definitely want to get into Skycoin though.
Yeah. But so basically, what I think kept people, there were multiple coins before Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Some of them do not even have web pages mentioning them. They launched and no one used them because you launch a coin, you have all the coins, and then you have to distribute it somehow. And basically, the reason Bitcoin survived and the others died was Bitcoin gave people free internet money. So you would just run this computer program and you get free money. And that's why people kept doing Bitcoin. It was sort of a hobby, like mining or building like, automobiles or building like little ships or something, or flying kites or whatever. It's just a hobby.
Sure.
So and then once Bitcoin had a monetary value, it became a market and it became a game and it became like gambling. And what I see in the altcoin market, I don't consider to be investing. I consider it to be like horse betting.
Sure.
So all the coins are like horses, and like yes, is gonna win. Yes, is gonna, or Diona, or they're just like betting on different horses. And Ripple's gonna pump. It's gonna pump. I need to buy it now. And it's like that people betting on the Super Bowl, or there's not actually a lot of investment. It's mostly speculation, and people like it because if you buy this coin at a penny and it goes to $50, you can make $10 or $20 million overnight in 3 months. So people are attracted to this market, but there doesn't have to be any substance behind the coin.
Sure.
At all.
Yeah.
And they see this guy getting rich and like, hey, he bought a car and he just dumped his wife and he got this new hot girl and look at the condos he's buying and he just quit his job, and why am I still working at my shitty job in my cubicle when he has a hot girl in the Lambo and he's a full-time condo shopper, and why didn't I buy Dogecoin when it was at a millionth of a penny? And I should have bought light bulbs when it was at 7 cents, $800, and why does he get to be rich and I don't? So then people are like go around and they're looking like, what coin do I buy that's gonna make me rich?
Yeah.
And so to me, I think it's a gambler psychology, and I think it's a speculation, and I think most of the coins are playing into that psychology because that is the majority of the market. There's Skycoin and a few other coins that actually have software developers, but the reality of the market is only a very small number of coins have a blockchain. Most of the coins are ERC20 tokens. They're like on Ethereum's blockchain. They don't have their own blockchain. And they don't have software developers. Right. So if you don't have a blockchain and you don't have software developers, you have nothing. So there's only, and then in terms of platforms, there's only 4 or 6 real platforms like Skycoin, Ethereum, Lisk, Arc, IOTA isn't a platform. EOS is just BitShares. Actually, I think they're going to be mad at me for saying this, but if you look at it, it's the code base for EOS is just BitShares. They took BitShares and they rename it EOS. They do massive marketing, right? And they try to blow it up. And it's like Graphene and the developer BitShares and using the same code base. So, some of these coins are rebrands and relaunches some previous coins. Like one coin was the relaunch of like Dogecoin Dark, which was like a clone of Bitcoin Dark, and Monero and Dash are actually sort of the same coin because they're crypto note coins. And Bitcoin is the same as Monero and Dash. And they have 80 coins they launched, and 2 or 3 of them succeeded. And then they'll relaunch old coins and keep recycling it. So this coin will go up to 6 billion. They'll buy up all the coins for a penny, relaunch it, rename, and then bring it up to 6 billion, dump it on the public, do some marketing, and then they'll bring in the next coin the next year, and they'll just keep rotating them.
That's interesting.
And it's
so that kind of begs the question, though, that it's interesting because I am a big believer that like the platforms will ultimately beat out the ones with the most utility, the most value, the most functionality will beat out, and it's more of a platform play ultimately because everything's built on top of that platform and so forth and so on, right? And so do you think, in your opinion, that it ultimately will be one platform that actually beats out the other platforms, or do you think the platforms can coexist, right? And I think of like TCP/IP back in the early days of the internet and like other protocols that were being used, one ultimately won, right? Do you think that's similar?
It'll be 2 or 3.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Ethereum is huge right now. A million coins on ERC20. And every time you do a transaction, you're paying $4 up to $7 now per transaction. And so Ethereum is drowning in fees. For every time you buy or sell a cat on like CryptoKitties, you have to pay these huge fees. It's ridiculous. But instead of having their own blockchain, each coin is stuck on Ethereum paying fees to Ethereum. So what we did in Skyledger when we're building out this platform is we created this thing called Fiber, and everyone on our platform has their own blockchain. So you're not paying transaction fees to Skycoin, or you can do 1 million transactions a second if you want, or per hour, or whatever you want, and you're not paying fees to anyone. So this is great if you're an application developer or if you're a college student prototyping a centralized app. But if you're Ethereum and the whole market is going to move to personal blockchains, then Ethereum is going to off the cliff. And same thing with EOS.
All of them.
Why am I going to launch my coin on EOS if I can have my own blockchain? It doesn't make sense to. So yes, there are going to be platforms, but like TCP, the platform there were proprietary networking protocols where you had to pay a license and $3,000 to use the thing, but they didn't take off. Whereas TCP was free and everyone could use it. And basically, I think Novell developed it, but they didn't end up controlling it. But their stock price went up $1 billion because they own the standard. But what's going to happen is we're going to have open standards. There's going to be no transaction fees, and everyone's going to have their own blockchain. So it is going to be a platform, but not in the way we think of. So Bitcoin's the first generation. The second generation is Ethereum, EOS, these platforms. But the third generation is not platform. It's a platform, but it's a protocol. So Skycoin, we provide the protocol, and it is a platform, but you own your own blockchain. And that's what the companies ask us. So we're not going to get the fees necessarily that we're going to make money on the side. Like we're going to have DEX, and we're going to use coin hours for the DEX for all the coins on the platform. And we figured out other ways, but we're not going to have the gas cost. So in order to achieve mass adoption and take over the market, it has to be an open protocol.
So, oh, go ahead. No, so go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say. Go ahead.
You know that Chinese guy the Chinese billionaire guy? He funded Quantum, and he funded all these coins in China, and he had a big exchange that was shut down by the Chinese government. And he did some recording for 3 hours. Someone recorded him secretly behind the stage and then posted it on the internet. And he's like, the whole market's a scam. Ethereum's a scam. Dio's a scam. It's all scam. Merge's a scam. And if you look, and he says you get like a charismatic leader and people follow the leader and you build up your little group and then you say, oh, buy now, everyone pump. And then your little crew comes and pumps the coin and then the public piles in thinking they're going to get rich. And all the pump groups. And it's really a leader-centric model. The coins that are going to succeed have personality cults. Like Satoshi, the Bitcoin is Satoshi. Bitcoin Cash has Roger Ver. Although I don't even get started on that.
That's coming, but that is actually coming. But keep going though. That's good.
EOS, Ethereum has Vitalik. I got stuck in the figurehead. I got for Skycoin, so I get to be on the firing squad, and lined up and shot. So these coins are really built around Bitveritasium has that guy. I forgot what his name is, Ronnie or Roji.
Not sure of that.
So you have these qualities of the coin, like you have to have a protocol, you have to have a platform, you have to have applications to get users, you have to have software developers, you have to have management that can actually get software done, which is difficult.
Sure.
Doing marketing is easy. It's like I think anyone can do marketing, but the software development is really hard, and unfortunately, a lot of people who can do software development can't do the marketing. But
that makes sense. I mean, so you envision everybody at some point having their own personal blockchain, which is kind of a whole nother conversation and topic. It's very fascinating. I mean, it's interesting what that'll actually do and what can be done with that. But I mean, let's get into Skycoin a little bit deeper. Like, how did you get involved in Skycoin? How was it, how did it come about? Why do you back it? Like, why are you so solid, or bullish, if you will, on Skycoin opposed to anything else, right?
So when we were looking at Bitcoin at the start, even when I was a year after Gox, one mining pool controlled the whole network. So we say that Bitcoin was decentralized publicly.
Sure.
And we say that Bitcoin is anonymous in public. It's anonymous and decentralized. Okay, I love it. Anonymous, decentralized. Sounds great, right? It was wonderful. But the reality is that one mining pool controlled over 50% of the hashing power of the network for over a year. So Bitcoin was completely decentralized. Like, one mining pool controlled the whole network for years. And today it's 3 mining pools that all get equipment from Bitmain. So Bitmain basically controls Bitcoin right now. And then and Bitmain's funding Bitcoin Cash and Roger Ver, and they're funding forks and confusing the hell out of the users and buying Bitcoin.org, and then making people. And you go to Bitcoin.org to download a Bitcoin wallet, and they give you a Bitcoin Cash wallet. So you have the company that basically controls Bitcoin, forking Bitcoin and dividing the community and confusing the hell out of all the new users. And basically, they're going to destroy Bitcoin. So you had this thing so Bitcoin's supposed to be decentralized, right?
Sure.
It's not. It's completely centralized. There's 3 mining pools, and they all get their equipment from one company, and Bitmain's the only ASIC manufacturer basically at this point. So so we have to fix Bitcoin. Bitcoin was supposed to be a decentralized currency, and it's not. So we spent 4 years with Skycoin developing new consensus algorithms to get rid of the miners. Because immediately, even in the second year after Bitcoin launched, everyone realized that Bitcoin was going to be consolidated into an oligarchy of miners. And we saw some really nasty things, like miners make money on transaction fees. Miners figured out they could make more money by injecting fake transactions into the network with like $40 fees. And then when they execute the transaction, they get the fee back. And so they create a fake transaction to themselves from one of their wallets to another wallet with a $50 fee that they get back into their pocket when they mine the block. And they were enforcing everyone else in the Bitcoin network to pay $50 fees to encourage their mining rewards. So the miners are actually holding the Bitcoin network hostage. So we said we want to have a decentralized cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin, in an ideal, when it was created, this libertarian dream of stateless, anonymous digital money, it was supposed to be decentralized, and it ended up not being. So we have to fix Bitcoin. So we spent forever. It's almost been a decade now, actually, working on these problems. The first of how do we fix Bitcoin? The second thing is Bitcoin is not anonymous. The governments right now, FBI, NSA, all the government agencies, they have these firms that grab all the data, transaction data. They do country of origin tracking. They do dusting. They actually would, like, if they want to track your wallet, they'll send like a nano Bitcoin, and they'll dust the wallet, and then look how your wallet will respond to the dust being injected. They have all these tools to de-anonymize Bitcoin. And they basically can figure out who owns what. And if pretend two outputs in Bitcoin, the outputs store the coins. Pretend 2 outputs have 2 different addresses, and they're spent in the same transaction. I know those 2 addresses belong to the same wallet. So if you do enough transactions, I can get most of the addresses in your wallet. And I can say, okay, this is a change address, and this is the human address. This is the amount being sent, because the change address will have 6 random numbers, and the human amount will be like 0.01, but like 2 decimal places max. So I can trace the whole graph. I can look at your IP address that ejected your transaction. I can do all this stuff. So we said we want to make an anonymous cryptocurrency. So in Skycoin, we did coin join. We have some privacy coin features. We did some masking so that your computer isn't the one injecting the transactions in the network. You encrypt the transaction, send it to a node, they pass it around, and then you send the decryption key to another node, and they pass it around, and then the data and the decryption key meet, and then some random guy decrypts it and then injects it, so your IP address isn't leaked.
Sure.
We wanted to have a hardware wallet that was actually secure, so we're not using Trezor or relying on third party. We have our own hardware wallet. We have so it's just about fixing Bitcoin, because basically Bitcoin kept getting developed, and then Satoshi died, or he left, or whatever happened, and then it stopped. And Bitcoin really, if you look at the Bitcoin core and you download it today, it's really not different than it was 6 years ago.
Sure.
It's a bit faster maybe, but in terms of the features and the usability, Bitcoin hasn't been going anywhere in the last 6 or 8 years. And so if you want to, so I consider Bitcoin to be like MySpace. I think it's like, oh, here's a cool social network here, but it's not the Facebook. It's not the it's not the thing that you have all these early companies, and they're sort of probing the market. They discover the market, but then the company that ends up taking the market is always the one that comes in after the first companies.
Sure. Yeah.
They say that there's a first mover advantage, but the first company in the market that comes in always dies. So before Bitcoin, you had Cash and Tron Cash, and they're just in the graveyard now.
Sure.
And now Bitcoin sort of survived, but it's going to go on until it hits its limit, and then once it's at that limit, then the successors have to take over. So Skycoin is really just, I consider, just carrying the torch over from Bitcoin.
Skycoin, it has a lot of the it has a lot of capabilities. I mean, if you just even look on the website, you can see that there's multiple capabilities built in and baked in. And I think it may be difficult for a lot of the public to even understand like what the differentiating factors are, right? All they hear is Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. I mean, what really, I mean, you have SkyMiner, you have Skywire, you have CX, you have, I mean, Fiber, I could go on and on and on. And I understand some of it, but like, how would you break down like the biggest advantages or the biggest kind of reasons why people should even look at Skycoin opposed to Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin's, obviously the walking dead, more or less, right? Like, how can you shift public opinion to really get that? Who, when they're not developers or they're not tech savvy and whatnot? How do you?
So right now you have like a messenger coin, and you want to send a message. Oh, download messenger coin, and every message is one messenger coin, and you're gonna file coin for storing your file. And you want videos, you need video coin. And you want to do shopping, you need shopping coin. And you want to buy farm stuff. Oh, you need farm coin. And you want to, and it's just like ridiculous. Like, do you want to have one coin for every single app that you do? Like, if you weren't going to build a real like an operating system, right? I have a new operating system. You don't say, I have a new file system. I have a new way of storing files. People aren't going to care about that. Or I have a new networking protocol. Or all this stuff is bundled right now, right? You have your operating system, your file protocol, your cloud storage, your video player, your whatever. It's a platform.
Yeah.
And if you release a new messaging app or something, or a new file storage app outside that platform, and it's not compatible with the existing platform, no one's going to use it. Yeah. So what we're doing is we bundle all the functionality you need. Like, to build real decentralized applications, you don't just need a file storage, and you don't just need messaging, and you don't just need payments, and you don't just need a smart contract. It's not enough that he has a smart contract language over there, and he has a messaging protocol, and he has a file system, and he has a blockchain, because they're not incompatible. It's like I have blockchain coin and messenger coin and file coin and and smart contract coin, and they're not. And a real application has to use each of these components together, and so you have to build a platform or basically an operating system for blockchain that like allows you to smart contracts, allows you to do video games on blockchain, gives you, allows you to have a user interface, allows you to store files, allows you to communicate with public keys and do communication, allows hardware platform to run the stuff on, hardware wallet to store your digital assets. Everything. If there's something that people need to basically build their blockchain applications, we have some form of that on Skycoin. Yeah. And in EOS, I consider, and these other coins like EOS, Ethereum, they're second generation. They have a blockchain, right? And they have some smart contracting languages, but you have 100,000 applications on one blockchain. When we go to Fiber, we're talking about millions of digital assets being put onto the blockchain with their individual blockchain, each one having its individual blockchain. And then we have to have interoperability between them and doing asset swaps and exchanges and OTC transactions. And we have fungible assets. Like one Bitcoin is the same as any other Bitcoin, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I give you a Bitcoin, you give me a Bitcoin, it's the same. One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. But if you have a cat, right, and this cat's not the same as this cat, or you have a derivative, and this derivative has a different maturity date than this derivative, they're non-fungible. Yeah. So we have people on our platform doing non-fungible digital assets, and they need exchanges, or they need to be able to trade and exchange non-fungible digital assets between users. So not only do we have to support like Bitcoin and Ethereum, we have non-fungible assets like what? Auction houses and things like that. And so the next generation of blockchain is really getting all of these assets onto the blockchain, and the limitation like Ethereum and I was thinking deal with fungible digital assets, but then you get to fungible digital non-fungible digital assets, and it's a train wreck. Yeah. So the challenge is really this is like, the blockchain right now is where the personal computer was. You had an Apple II, and you have like a little floppy disk, and you could plug it in and play like Oregon Trail or something, right? Yeah. But you didn't have a network. You didn't have a printer. You didn't have a scanner. You didn't have a microphone. You didn't have a video camera. You didn't have software. You didn't have an operating system. Right. You didn't have, you want to load a file, you put it in the DOS disk, and then you take a second floppy disk, and you and if you want to load networking functionality, you get like a fourth floppy, and you install the floppy with the networking, and and you hit the buttons, and and that's where we are right now. Because but today you open up like Mac OS X, right? You open up a MacBook, and you can use a web browser. You can watch video. You can do messaging. You can do video conferencing. You have a webcam. You have a microphone. You have a keyboard. You have all the stuff you need to use the computer, and you can do PowerPoint. All the stuff is bundled. Yeah. So with Skycoin, we're really building out sort of an operating system for these new decentralized applications. And so they say, why are we doing video games? That's because we're doing video games because we think video games on blockchain is going to be $1 trillion industry. So of course we're doing video games. Yeah. And why are we doing mesh network? It's because we need applications. And why are we doing messaging? It's because of course there's going to be blockchain messaging. Yeah. And we don't need 550. Have you seen the 50 messenger coin ICOs?
I've seen many of them. I don't know how many. I've seen quite a few. I've seen a bunch of different like video game ICOs as well, like Ashura Coin, Bounty. I've actually done some reviews on them, and you're going to basically take those or enable those type of companies rather than being built on the ERC20 platform on the Ethereum blockchain. You're going to essentially give them their own blockchain and say, okay, build this on the Skycoin platform on your own blockchain. Multiple blockchains would coexist. Okay, yeah, just want to make sure I understand that. That's awesome.
So the video game companies are platforms on top of platforms. Ethereum's a platform, and then they want to build a platform on top of Ethereum. Yeah. But is it really going to work for video game payments if you have to pay $7 every time you have to transfer money between two people? No. It's crazy. It's insane. So the first thing is to get them on their own blockchain. The second thing is we don't need platforms. Skycoin is the platform. Yeah. If you're a video game developer and you're building a decentralized app or a video game, or just you can build a decentralized poker on CX, and you can use even create your own coin if you wanted for the payments, or you can do Skycoin or Bitcoin. But if you're doing a poker app and taking 0.1%, you don't care if you're getting paid in Bitcoin or Skycoin or what you. So why do you even need a token, right? Sure. But you only care about the app and being able to get it in front of users. Sure. So we provide the infrastructure, and then they build it. So we're going directly to the developer. So what I think a lot of these game coins will do is they'll raise a lot of money, and they might fund 1 or 2 games, but they're not going to have a platform where they have 4,000 developers developing their own game. And that's what we want on top of Skycoin. I think that's what we're aiming for.
That makes a lot of sense, the way you explained it, how it's bundled together as kind of an operating system. That really actually makes me a lot more excited about Skycoin, honestly, the way you just described it. Maybe touch on a little bit on Skyminer and Skywire. First Skyminer, and then maybe Skywire after that. I'm curious how Skywire is different from like the substratums, or there's a number of different companies trying to build the decentralized internet. But maybe you could touch on both of those, Skyminer, Skywire.
Yeah.
Why?
So Skyminer is our hardware platform, and Skywire is the messaging protocol where you get paid for forwarding packets, basically. But the Skyminer is a bunch of cell phone processors. It has there's a small one right now. It looks really cool. It has there's a huge waiting list. Like 10,000 people are waiting.
Wow.
It's gonna take like 10 years.
Wow.
To increase the production. But it has 8 cell phone computers in it.
Okay.
Each computer can run different apps. So you could have like 3 Skywire nodes, 2 Kitty Cash nodes, 1 Skycoin node, 1 Messenger node, and it's a personal cloud basically for blockchain applications. Okay. So if you're like a student or your college lab and you want your students to develop blockchain applications, you could buy like a Skyminer with 64 nodes, and then you can deploy different decentralized applications to each node and run them. And if you have excess computing power, you can rent out your storage and bandwidth and computation to other people and receive points for it. So the idea is, if we have 500 blockchain applications, each blockchain application needs its own CPU, because if we're sharing 5 apps on one CPU, as soon as the transaction, the signature verification rate, as soon as the number of transactions is really high, that one app on the thing will take 100% of the CPU, and then there won't be any CPU for the rest of them. So when we're actually doing real applications in the real world, we have dedicated hardware with one node, and it's guaranteed that it can do 300 transactions a second.
Got it.
So there's because what happens is, if you have like half the nodes in the network can't go above this level of performance, then as soon as the network goes above that level, these nodes stop syncing and they drop off the network. And this is a problem with IOTA, is there's no way to actually rate limit the transactions so that the transactions are coming in slower than the validator node can process the transactions.
Yeah.
So, and we have corporations that want to do like power grids and things like on the blockchain. And they don't want to have 16 blockchains running on one node, and then this blockchain getting a lot of transactions and slowing down another unrelated blockchain. It doesn't. So we have dedicated hardware, a dedicated hardware platform, which is like a personal cloud computing cluster that you can put in your home, and you can make money on it by writing out the nodes basically if you're not using them.
How do you plan on deploying all the Sky miners? Like how can that scale? I'm just curious, personally, because how would you get a Sky miner? How expensive would it be? Would it only be for like commercial use? Would it be for individual? Like how would it all be deployed and scaled? Like
right now the Sky miner has 8 CPUs. We're building one with like 600 or 256.
Oh wow!
CPUs,
Okay.
Like one the size of a mini fridge.
Yeah.
And like we're building network attached storage Sky miners. We're building. We're gonna be shipping like 300,000 a month soon.
Wow.
Factory SOC. It's not actually very. In terms of scaling, there's one thing like production, factory. It takes like 6-8 months to get everything in place so that we can actually scale the production.
Sure.
And then there has to be demand. Like it's not enough just to put 200,000 nodes in the network. You need applications that actually are using the nodes. So we're building. So when Skywire is out, you're going to see the demand increase exponentially. But the cheapest SkyMiner node is going to be about $20.
Okay. So that's relatively inexpensive. Yeah. I mean.
But if you have 50 of those, right? And then it's, you have 256 $20 nodes, then it's
it all makes sense. I mean, it's kind of chicken or the egg. The applications, the actual hardware itself, or kind of do it simultaneously. But then that kind of brings us to Skywire, right? And building a decentralized internet. Maybe you could touch on that, like what it is, how it's going to work, and how it really differentiates from some of the competition out there.
So there's mesh networks in the past that people have tried building. Skywire is going to be the first actual application that needs blockchain. Okay. Bitcoin's a prototype basically, but it's like, why does anyone need to use it? They don't really need to use it. It's
sure.
But in Skywire though, it's a networking protocol, and you can connect to your neighbor, or connect your computer to the internet. It'll connect to other computers, and you basically do forwarding of packets for the network. And if you forward packets for the network, you get paid. Okay. And if you provide resources to the network, you get paid.
Okay.
And if you consume resources, you pay the network.
Okay.
So you can rent out file storage, and if you provide file storage, you get paid. And if you rent out file storage, you pay. So this is a way for people to run a program on their SkyMiner and to forward packets and receive money. And eventually, what's really interesting, there's a company I like called Ubiquity Networks, and they have these dishes, and they can go 15 miles. They can go 5 kilometers, and they can do 300 megabits, 1 gigabit per second. So we have these really long range Wi-Fi and 5 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz antennas. And if you're in a city and enough of these people have them on their roof, you could build out a physical network now that would be gigabit per second, and which would be owned by the community. So we really like this idea of community internet service providers. So there's a community and they build their ISP and they own it, and everyone pays $5 a month and gets 1 gigabit per second. The alternative is the government does it, like municipal broadband, or a company does it, like Comcast. And so the best thing is if the community owns the infrastructure. Like if you want 10 gigabits instead of 1 gigabit, you just buy more equipment, right? It's really sending your neighbor to buy more equipment. And if you provide resources to the network, you get paid. So you'll own this equipment and you'll actually make money on it. You won't even be paying for your internet because you'll be forwarding traffic for other people. And the people who own the really fat pipes will actually be renting most of the capacity out to other people. So it'll actually be a profit center. So this question of how do we build community internet service providers? How do we actually do that? And I think Skywire, it solves a lot of problems. It solves net neutrality. It solves the fact that you can't get 1 gigabit per second unless Comcast wants to give you 1 gigabit per second, and they're not going to do that. And if they did, they're going to charge you $1,000 a month. It addresses the fact that the last mile is actually where all the cost is. So if you wanted to go to the colo and rent the 1 gigabit per second, you could get it very cheaply. You could the cost of the bandwidth is almost free at the colo center, but when you look at the cost of bandwidth at your house, you're paying hundreds of times what the backbone provider is paying. So we're able to eliminate Comcast and Time Warner. We're able to fix net neutrality because in this protocol, it's basically net neutrality is enforced at the protocol level. The person forwarding your packet doesn't know who it's going to, and they don't know what the content is. So there's nothing they can do to discriminate against it. So this solves a lot of, and then in Africa, if you put in copper wire, people will pull up the copper wire and install for scrap metal. So you install all this infrastructure and they'll pull it up. And so it's like we need to, and in the rural villages, it turns out that the people are spending 50% of their income on cellular data. So we have people in Kenya like saying, we want to do this here. We want to do 100,000 nodes. My grandmother needs this. She's in her village. And the telecom providers are raping her, and these people are starving and dying of malaria, and they're spending 50% of their income while they're starving to death on their cell phone data just so they can communicate with their families. So when we go, so there's these markets like Africa and markets like in rural broadband, and then there's even some urban areas where people just say, I want 10 gigabit per second internet. I don't want 100 megabit, and they won't give it to me, so I'm going to do it myself. So these applications, these segments, that's what we're doing with Skywire. And Skywire, I think, is going to be one of the flagship projects in Skycoin. It's
does it? I mean, you brought up net neutrality. I mean, super interesting, and I'm a big believer in the whole decentralized internet and the way you describe it. It's fascinating. And do you think that will have the power then ultimately, because you hear it a lot, right? Decentralized internet is going to have the power to, bypass censorship, like China, right? They censor the internet at the protocol level, at the ISP level, right? Ultimately, will Skycoin or Skywire be able to bypass governments, third parties, censorship in general, right? It's a big topic, and I don't know if people really believe it, right? Because there's been a lot of attempts, nothing really successful. I'm just curious your take on that, like your opinion.
Yes. So there's 3 or 4 things going on right now. One of the things, Elon Musk is launching these 24 gigahertz satellites. And if you're in China and you buy like a little box like that big, it's like a directional antenna, and you can connect to one of these satellites. Can the government really stop you from connecting to the satellite? They can't. They can't. That's the first thing. The second thing is the new generation of internet is content distributed storage, or is content addressable storage, also called source independent networking. So if right now when I ask for a cat picture, I go to the server, and if the cat that goes all the way across the ocean to California and back, and the government censors at the submarine cables. In the new internet, one person, instead of asking for the cat photo, you get the hash of the cat photo, and you ask, give me the hash. And if someone in that city has already downloaded a copy of the cat photo, then you'll download it right from your neighbor or right from your city. You will not have to go all the way over the ocean to download another copy of the thing. So this is being integrated directly into the web browser and directly as an internet standard. So what China is trying to do, and Russia is going to do, and Brazil is going to do, is each country and government is going to create their own domestic internet standards. So we've had the global internet. The global internet is really the United States internet. Sure. Even if you sent a data packet from France to Germany, it would actually go through the United States, and it would go right. Even if it's right next to each other, go across the ocean, United States, the NSA could get a copy of it, and then it'd go all the way back across another submarine cable, basically owned by some U.S. company. So the global internet was really the U.S. internet. That everyone else was just attached onto, like a hub and spoke.
Yeah.
And can you one second?
Yeah, go ahead. Fascinating discussion. Hope you guys out there are enjoying it. I mean, I'm learning a ton from Synth, and hopefully you guys are as well. Definitely, leave some comments in the chat if you guys want me to ask any specific questions. Love it. He's back.
So we have a thing called internet balkanization. In 10 years, there's not going to be a global internet. There's going to be a Russian internet, a Brazilian internet, a Chinese internet, and then the internet of the alliance. The free states. Whatever you would call it. I don't know, the empire, like, what do they call it in Star Wars? I don't know. But the nations of the coalition of the willing.
Yes, that's what it is. No, that's crazy. That's interesting. I never thought about it like that. But yeah, I mean, and then only what they would allow will go through those countries. But then ultimately, Skycoin or Skywire can bypass that. I mean, ultimately, or Elon Musk.
Yeah, so if you're in China, you can't use Dropbox. If you're in the US, Baidu, whatever, doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if you're an international company who has operations in 4 things and you want to share a file between 2 of your offices, it's a pain in the ass.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you want to do messaging, and in China use this messenger, in this country use this messenger, this country use this messenger, and every single country, like in Dubai, it's WhatsApp, and in this country it's Telegram, and in this country it's WeChat. And if you're a business and you have all these people that have to communicate, it's really difficult. So on top of what's happening, on top of this balkanized internet, we're building the new global internet, and the new global internet has to be at the protocol level, it has to be at the hardware level. And the first adopters are going to be corporations, and they're not going to be using it because they want to. They're going to use it because they have to. They don't have a choice.
Yeah.
All these companies are adopting software-defined networking because they have to deal with all this bullshit and blocking and the routing and it's really. I get a lot of people like, hey, can we use this for this? Hey, can we use this for this? Hey, can we use this for this? And you'd really be surprised. So anyways, what each country is doing is you're going to have Twitter for the US, and Germany and France and the EU want their own Twitter that they control, some company they control, because they don't control Twitter. It's still under the US. The US controls it, basically. So they gave Google like a $1 billion fine or something, and say, you're going to do what we say. And if you don't, we're going to give you a $10 billion fine. And if that doesn't work, then we'll give you a $100 billion fine.
Sure.
And then they're going to eventually build up a domestic company that they own and their friends own. So that they have complete control, and they're not fighting between U.S. interests and European interests. So even European Union, and they had a law saying that all your data for EU users has to be in the EU. Because right now the data goes to U.S. companies, so the NSA and U.S. government gets a copy of all the data for all the people in Europe. And they say if you have data for European users, it has to stay in Europe. And eventually it'll be domestic companies that are given the market. It won't even be Google or Twitter.
Crazy,
and in Russia, they're going to have their domestic Twitter, their domestic Facebook, their domestic social networking, their domestic messaging, and China already has their domestic social network messaging and Twitter and Facebook, and the Chinese government calls it Internet Plus. And the reason they're doing this is because of national security. They can't allow another country to basically control all of the information and the data for all the people living in their country that they rule over.
So they're breaking the internet basically, but they're ultimately going to break the current internet. But then you guys, or Skycoin and folks like you guys, are going to rebuild that global internet on top of the old broken version 1.0 right of the internet. That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's a lot of work though.
But just a little.
In China, they have different Wi-Fi standards. So if you go and there's a domestic Wi-Fi company in China and they install a Wi-Fi router for like a public place, and you have a foreign cell phone, sometimes it doesn't connect.
Sure.
Because the Chinese government created a separate Wi-Fi standard from the international standard, but they couldn't get anyone in China to use it. And now the routers that sell support both the domestic and the international. And then half the people, like you have an iPhone. Oh, you have a Hong Kong iPhone. Your iPhone won't work on our you know, you can't access the Wi-Fi at a restaurant because you have a Hong Kong iPhone. You need to buy a Chinese iPhone. So you're eventually going to get to the point where your cell phone has to support either like the Brazilian Wi-Fi standard, the Russian Wi-Fi standard, the US Wi-Fi standard, and the Chinese Wi-Fi standard. Because like the Chinese put like wanted to be able to decrypt the Wi-Fi thing, and the US has some backdoor, but they won't share it with China.
Yeah.
And China created their own one that they have the backdoor for, but not the US.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So it's just like it's to the point that they're actually breaking the Wi-Fi protocols, and they'll eventually even have like domestic wireless protocols. So your cell phone might not be. Right now, there's still internet. You can still travel, and there's still international. But if you get the international version of the cell phone, it has to have like, you know, it's twice the cost, and it has to have 2 different SIM cards, and it's 2 radios, and it's heavier. And I've had one of these, but so something's. It's very weird.
It seems like that
even if they have the same protocol, right?
Yeah.
They will insist that it's domestic equipment. So in China, they want all the equipment has to be Huawei. And then in the U.S., all the equipment has to be Cisco.
Right.
And if you try to buy Huawei equipment, they'll try to block the purchase on national security grounds. So like Australia tried to buy Huawei equipment because it was cheaper, and then the parliament blocked it saying national security. So you either get the Chinese backdoor or the NSA backdoor. You get your choice. Is your network equipment going to be backdoored by the U.S. government or backdoored by the Chinese government? And then Russia, of course, is like, okay, we need domestic wireless, we need domestic network equipment manufacturers, and all our government and universities need to be on our domestic equipment, no foreign equipment. And so the whole internet, and then once they've got in control of the domestic standards, they're then going to create their own protocols they control.
Yeah.
And the internet is going to be balkanized to hell. And then to get around that, what you do is called software-defined networking. And there's all these monkey patches to keep the current internet running, but it only works for the corporations, and if you have it set up. And eventually we're going to move to a new native internet. And in China, the new internet, I don't think countries like Iran. Iran is a very interesting example. There's people that want to, I want to view Twitter, I want to see YouTube, I want to basically at some point you're going to have these protocols, and they're not going to be adopted by Google or Facebook. YouTube actually did a pilot where they decentralized the videos like BitTorrent, where every video was peer-to-peer, and it would save them a lot of money. But then they realized, hey, wait, if all the videos are peer-to-peer, they don't need us anymore. And we just spent this many dozen $1 billion to buy YouTube, and we're going to throw our whole investment down the drain, because if all the videos are peer-to-peer, no one needs YouTube. So why do we exist? So YouTube's a huge cash cow. They basically are the new television. And except with one channel, right? They own the whole thing. They own all the channels. Everywhere on the earth. But if you decentralize it, you don't need YouTube anymore. People can just own their own channels. They can just host their own channel on their, they can have the videos peer-to-peer. But since, so for Google, it's doomsday, but from a technological perspective, it's inevitable that these video sharing things be decentralized. But anyways, right now, how they block the data is they block it at the border. And with content distributed networking, once there's one copy of the data in the country or the city, you'll get a copy of that from the nearest neighbor, and you're going to have all these satellites in orbit that, like the Elon Musk, like 24 gigahertz satellites, and they're going to be relaying, and it's going to be really difficult to block the data, because you're going to have to block the satellites, and you're going to have to block transport within the city. And China even talked about blocking peer-to-peer applications, so that you're only able, that you have a client, your client, you're only allowed to connect to servers. You can't connect to other clients. And you want your app to have a network connection, it has to be whitelisted. And you have to have like a government ID. And when you establish the connection, you have to give a certificate saying that you were approved by the government. Oh, and your server too. If you want a server in China, you need a license from the government. And if you want a website, you need a license from the government. It seems publicly accessible web server. It
seems like that already would have a huge economic impact. Like right now, today, like as that's happening, and it seems like as it becomes more and more balkanized, as you put it, it's going to have a more and more of an economic impact in the countries themselves. Like how do you see that playing out, like locally at the local level, you know, because of that impact? Like, I haven't really thought about that, but I'm just curious if you have a perspective on that, because as the new internet grows up, there's going to be bigger opportunities, a bigger market, whatever, but there's also going to be an economic impact for the old internet dying, if you will, or imploding.
I don't care about it. That's their problem.
Yeah.
You know, we're building what we have to. We're building basically what the people are asking us, and we're coming in early. These problems I'm talking about, they're not going to be in people's face for 10 years. And we're just going to be quietly in the background building. And when the problem comes, we're going to be the solution.
Yep.
So the thing is, like, you know, the trains keep going this way, right?
Yep.
And you can either get in front of the train and try to stop the train and get run over.
Yep.
The train's going to crush you. You're not going to stop the train.
Yep.
Or you can jump on the train and you can go where the train's going. You know.
Yep.
So you have to. So this problem is because of the local politics and government politics,
sure.
and we understand what the problem is, and we're providing the solution. And what's very interesting is the governments don't so much care about Skywire and these decentralized internet apps much.
Yeah.
You'd think they would care a lot, but they don't. They're actually more worried. Like, we don't want the U.S. government controlling our data, but if it's decentralized and no one controls it, it's okay.
Yeah.
But if our enemy controls it, and we don't want that.
That's interesting.
So their perspective, and the other thing is that the governments are pragmatic, like they're sort of corrupt actually.
Sure.
The big companies, the Cisco's, the Huawei's, the Baidu's, whatever, they go to the government and they ask for these regulations so they can control the market. But like, let's make a domestic Wi-Fi protocol standard that we own.
Yeah.
Like, Huawei will go to the government and demand that China needs to be on this standard, because if you do that, then it means that no foreign Wi-Fi chips can be sold in China.
They'll lobby for it.
Because Huawei will own the standard, and everyone has to buy Huawei chips. So it'll make their market bigger, and they could charge double the price for those chips because they're mandated by the government.
Yeah.
So there's an economic incentive. And one of the things in China that I found out was the government wasn't actually censoring the overseas traffic so much because for censorship. It's because there's one company that owns the fiber optic cables going out of China overseas, and that company, before the ISPs would have to pay them for the money, so they would take the user and they would charge the user for overseas traffic. Then the company that owns the fiber optic cables had the law changed so that ISPs cannot charge the domestic companies for overseas traffic. So now anytime someone accesses a video on YouTube or overseas, the ISP has to pay the company that owns the fiber optic cable, and they can't charge the user anymore for it.
Wow.
So the company that owns the cable had the law passed to increase the overseas traffic so they could make more money, because the fiber optic cable wasn't at capacity. So by getting rid of the charge for overseas traffic, they made more money on the fiber optic cable, and then the ISPs now have to pay the fee. For the fiber optic cables. So the ISPs lose money from that. So then the ISPs started installing all this equipment to drop all the overseas, to detect that you're watching YouTube videos and drop your connection, and to throttle HTTPS.
Wow.
So the reasons for the censorship weren't like, oh, we had to protect the Communist Party or something like that. It was actually really like I talked to people, and it was economic, and they have other ways of blocking data that they don't use. They have all this shit installed, but they don't even care. It's actually the ISPs dropping the data so that they can avoid paying the company with overseas fiber. But if you have a company connection, there's company connections that have like dedicated lines, and they're completely YouTube's still blocked, but they're completely unthrottled.
Sure.
They're so the local economic, like the oligarchs, local companies will go to this government and they will ask for draconian bullshit, and backdoors and things like that, and they'll demand that the foreign company can't sell their equipment, and so this is going to be a huge fight. This isn't going away, and it's only going to get worse. So if you're a little company and you have like a couple offices, and you have to send emails between countries and send sync files, and you don't want people stealing your data, then this new internet, new operating system, new hardware platform we're building is going to be great for those companies. I mean, and it's also good.
Oh, go ahead.
It's also going to be great for the companies that want to get rid of Cisco. So right now they use Cisco MPLS, and they use Cisco Linux, and they use like Docker, and we're eventually doing like cloud deployment things, and we can eventually replace most of what Cisco does. So we have a sort of a mixture of like blockchain stuff, and then stuff like networking equipment like Cisco, and then like service provision stuff like IBM. So Skycoin as an organization, we're just all over the whole silo.
Yeah, you're the whole ecosystem, the whole package, really. I mean, talking about all this, all the corruption, everything that's going on in the governments at the national level, at the local level, and all this corruption. I mean, that is one thing that brings a lot of people into Bitcoin, right? The kind of cult mentality that we're going to bypass governments, we're going to bypass third parties, we're going to get rid of banks, they're no longer going to exist. How do you kind of see that playing out, like in terms of an actual global currency being developed off of some sort of blockchain or other technology that Skycoin is creating? Like, do you actually see a global payment system emerging, a global currency emerging? Do you kind of foresee, a day when governments will not actually have control of, the monetary system like they do today with fiat and printing and central banking? And like, how do you see that playing out? 'Cause that's a big theme in like the whole Bitcoin.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It's right. So there will not be one global currency. Okay. Bitcoin will die, and the whole market will be fragmented over thousands of assets. And some assets will be very big, but they'll be more like companies. It's like Skycoin isn't really a digital currency; it's more like a company. Like we have an internet service provider, we're telecom. We have customers and revenue and hardware sales and video games and platforms. And it's more like an Apple or a Google than it's a company. And you're going to have bigger companies coming in like GE or General Electric, and they're going to issue their own coins, their own tokens. You're going to have, we have governments coming to us. We're doing 3 government projects right now. Okay. And it's very slow. Like, I don't even know if we're going to be able to announce them publicly, like 2 to 4 years or what it's just really slow. But there's a country, and most of the people have stopped using the government's currency in this African country. Yeah. And they're doing all the card payments and all the things with Bitcoin. Yeah. And the government is freaking out. They're like, if people aren't using our currency, how do we pay the military? Like, how do we pay the government? How do we, how do we collect taxes? Yeah. Right? Yeah. So the currency is worthless, and you'd have to like have 4 wheelbarrows to buy cash, and they would 4 wheelbarrows of cash to buy a car or something. And so they would people start using Bitcoin because their currency is inflating at 15% a year. And so the government says, hey, we want to have our own cryptocurrency. Yep. So we're going to give this government their cryptocurrency, and the president who comes in, he's going to be rich. He's going to be printing all his money, and everyone's going to be happy. He's going to be throwing money from the sky and getting all the unbanked people on the, they'll give him a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin for the government. Because you don't have to go to a bank. You install a cell phone app, and you can immediately start sending and receiving money. You trade, no ID verification, no lines, no fees, it's great. So to get 100 million people onto something very quickly who have cell phones, it's perfect. Mm-hmm. It's going to destroy the banks. There's going to be no banks in that country pretty soon. But once people are used to using cryptocurrencies 10, 20 years from now, the next president's problem. Yeah. They're not going to necessarily use the government's currency. They're going to say, well, do I want to hold my money in this one or this one or this one? Yeah. And so it's very natural that the governments are going to completely lose control over money. Yeah. And so will the banks. Yeah. And this is happening right now, and there's nothing that can be done about it. This is inevitable. It's inevitable that the power of money printing is going to corporations and small groups and indigenous groups. Like, you have the Catalonian separatist movement, and they decide they want to issue a currency for Catalonia and hire their military. They can do that. And no one could stop them. What happened? Go ahead. What happened in Greece? The Greece government actually had a plan to clone the tax system and to create their own parallel currency to get out of the EU and and get out of being like raped, because they were basically raping the country of all the resources and money. They got them in a situation where they agreed to take on debt, and then they devalued the currency, so the debt became unpayable, and then they just kept looting, and they know that the only way they'd get out of the cycle was default. And some guy in the government's like, hey, let's print our own currency. They tried to do this, and what they found out was that the government doesn't actually control their banking or tax system. It's completely privately owned by these commercial banks that own all the software. Yeah. So the payment system for the taxes, the computer systems the taxes are run on, the interbank clearing. So it's already happening. It's already happening then. I mean, it already is happening, like in a different way, not on blockchain per se, but on software. It's already kind of happened. Yeah, so the government already has lost control over the currency to these private banks and institutions, and the government tries to do something, and they realize they can't. Yeah, the banks won't cooperate, and then they control all the infrastructure and software and personnel. and they don't actually run any. So then, but now what crypto and blockchain does is it allows them to go directly to the public around these commercial banks and around the incumbent financial institutions. And they're going to do that. So it could, and this isn't, I'm not going to say this is going to be a utopia or it's going to be a perfect world. But you're going to have some dictator come to power, and he's going to issue his own currency.
Of course.
And he's going to pay off all his friends, and he's going to consolidate power and the media. And he's going to be like a king, the new king, right? Before you had like this company controls the media, this is the banking system, this banking system, and everyone was like balanced out. There was a balance of power.
It was all,
So the president gets in power, and he can't just take over the whole country. But with cryptocurrency, if he issues his own coin and he has the money and he hires some thugs and he goes, you know, starts grabbing, nationalizing industries, and so there's going to be a lot of people that lose money if things start getting nationalized, and you have these. So there's going to be power consolidation on one level. On the other level, there's going to be decentralization. Communities like Catalonia and like Iran, and different groups that want to rebel, or they want to, like people in Iran, like they're under this religious government, and if they don't do what they say, they get their head cut off. They have public executions. You have a regime, and they'll say, you're going to do what we say, and if you don't, we're going to cut off your head. And not only are we going to execute you, we're going to do it in public. They have like a town square, and like every Saturday, all the families go, like a picnic, and go out there, watch the evil people, you know, fought against the regime, getting their heads cut off or something. You know, it's just ridiculous. It's like, do what we say, we're going to kill you. So there's people that have to, like, if there was social media and people had freedom to communicate, they would say, we're not putting up with this shit. You know, there would be rebellion.
Of course.
So so it could be good and it could be bad. It's not going to build a utopia on Earth, but it's going to fix some of our existing problems, so it's going to cause new problems.
Well, the thing that comes to mind is that recently the U.S. through Goldman Sachs has said they're going to create the USD coin, right? The USD coin, which is going to be equivalent to $1. And I actually made a YouTube video that said, what's going to be the value or utility of the USD coin opposed to something else that's more functional, that has more utility in the long run? And I'm just curious your thoughts on that, like with the dollar, with the debt that's coming up, you know, even each state is trying to issue their own cryptocurrency. The US government is trying to issue it, but there's going to be no economic like utility or value greater in those cryptocurrencies versus something else like a Skycoin or a Bitcoin or whatever else it is. And can you see that consolidation of power coming to the U.S.? Because I'm sure the U.S. is fairly scared, I would think, you know, with everything going on, everything you've said, it could play out a lot of different ways. Like, how do you think that could play out?
So the U.S. is very complicated.
drink some more tea. This one's going to take a minute.
Yeah, this is going to take a while. I go on this for 2 hours. So they've been trying to do this thing called FedCoin, which is the federal government's coin. And R3 had a proposal for it, but it fell apart. And of course, Goldman Sachs bought Poloniex. Through Circle. Goldman Sachs invested in Circle, and Circle bought Poloniex. And someone that evil blog post that said I was the evil villain. They said that I said that Goldman Sachs owned Bitfinex, and I said Goldman Sachs bought Circle, which owns or invested in Circle, and Circle owns Poloniex. And then now that they have the exchange, they're issuing a USD Tether through Circle. And USD Tether is basically controlled by Bitfinex. Anyway, so that article completely butchered that. That pissed me off. Not the evil villain stuff, but that they said that I said that Goldman Sachs owns Bitfinex. I never said that. But anyway, so they wanted to do FedCoin, and R3 was going to issue FedCoin, and they had a proposal, but R3 sort of fell apart, and they're just languishing. And Ripple wanted to do the same thing, but Goldman Sachs ended up getting, you know, is probably the one that's going to win because they're both powerful. And Goldman Sachs does the JP Morgan do like the food stamp program and all the food stamps and the open market operation. FOMO is Federal Open Market Operation.
Okay.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah. That's crazy. That is funny. I mean, man, we're going to create some conspiracy theories here, but I mean, there's some truth to like a lot of this though. I mean, like the dollar is in trouble, but they're obviously going to try to save it. And I mean, it could go so many different directions. So
here's the thing. They don't care whether you can make money if something goes up and you can make money if it goes down. You can make money building a building up, and you can make money tearing it down.
Sure.
So these people are not. You would think that the U.S. empire is tied to the dollar. And, oh yeah, we love the dollar and blah 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 blah. They're going to use the dollar as long as it's useful.
Yeah.
And then when it's not useful anymore, then they're going to implode it and move on to the next thing.
Yes.
So they're very. These people don't have an ideology. They're not like libertarian or conservative. They're pragmatists.
They want money.
They see, what do we have? What do we need to get done? And how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
They don't care about morality, ethics. They don't care what people will think.
Yeah.
They don't care whether anyone's done it. But it's like, will this work? It might work. Okay, try it. And they'll say a goal, and they'll have 50 different ways of getting the goal done, and maybe 49 of them will fail.
Yeah.
But who cares? As long as one works.
Yeah, and they control it, and they're the one in front with the power. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
They have the power. So what I've seen some crazy shit. I'm gonna get, if I even talk about it, I'm gonna get like another blog post.
Talk about it, because I can turn this off if you want. I just want to hear your opinion, but.
So. They had all these workers in the U.S., for instance, in the 80s, and they were making equivalent of $150,000 a year today. So all these factory workers in the U.S. were making as much as Google.
Sure.
People at Google, but people don't want to work 8 hours a day. I want 6 hours a day.
Sure.
I want to work 4 hours a week instead of 5 hours a week. I want twice as much money. And the people didn't want to sit in the factory putting screws in televisions. Yeah. So the people who own these factories are like, wait, we're paying them $150,000 a year. They have a huge McMansion. They have a lawn to garden. They have a wife and 2 children, 2 automobiles, a doghouse, electrical appliances, refrigerator, 40-inch television, shopping malls. They don't have to like butcher their meat anymore. They have everything, right? We gave them everything. There's nothing more that we can give these people, right? And they're still bitching and asking for more. And they're like, wow, what do we do? So, and you would have like this. And so you see these like billionaires or like trillionaires or whoever owns like the factories, and they're looking at after World War II, they came into the U.S. and they promoted suburban living where everyone has like lawn and things, because in the Cold War, if you had cities and you pack everyone in cities and Russia detonates a hydrogen bomb, they'd wipe out everyone. Everyone dies. Yep. So they wanted to centralize the living and American dream, suburban home, and everyone was like a 1-hour commute from the cities. They gave them automobiles, so that the country would be more survivable in the nuclear war. And this company called Rand Corporation in Santa Monica actually decided how people are going to live. They did a study, and they said it would be better for our nuclear war planning strategy if people live here instead of there. So they should live like this and not like this. Then they got all the corporations together. Like they go to underground bunker or whatever. I don't know where the hell they have these meetings.
They go to Jekyll Island or
like the Iron Mountain. What is it? The Iron Mountain. Or
the Illuminati
from Iron Mountain. But they get them. They bring them in, right? And they get all the corporations, CEOs, owners of the companies, and they say, "Here's the new American dream." Yeah. And then all the companies go out and they start at Madison Avenue and they start advertising it. And they talk, you need to have a dog. You have a dog house. You need a lawn. Yeah. You need to go out every morning, Saturday, and mow your lawn. You need a wife and
2.5 kids.
1 car. American dream, the package. And they're sitting there with their barbecues, like, barbecuing hot dogs.
You see ads like that. You see the ads like that. They got the barbecues and they're like, hey, Johnny, here's the American dream. It's like exactly like that. The 50s. I mean, that's exactly the.
So they sold this image of what your life is supposed to be, and then millions of people went out, and that image becomes reality.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so these factory workers, they're paying massive amounts of money. There's nothing more that they could have given these people. That's practically like they had built the practical utopia.
Sure.
Basically, they said they built. Pleasantville.
It was efficient.
They built Pleasantville. Pleasantville was what the U.S. was at the end of World War II, and people were still unhappy. Yeah. They were still revolting. They were still rioting. They were still looking for injustice in the world that needed to be. I'd be like, hey, your life's good. You don't have any problems. There's no disease. Everyone's fed. Everyone's equal. Everyone has a house. Everyone has a car.
Yeah.
Everyone, and people look and say, you give everyone like a 2-kilogram steak, and you say his steak is 5 grams bigger than mine. I want a bigger steak.
Yeah.
And they're jealous and envy. So no matter how much you give people, they'll never be happy or content to the point that they stop revolting.
Sure.
So then they realize this. And then they're like, hey, wait. And then the next generation who came in, I think, was really cynical and dangerous.
Sure. Yeah.
And so they built Pleasantville. It didn't work. And so they sort of got a bit nastier. And so they took the labor and they took the factories. They took all the equipment. They moved it to China. And they told the Chinese government, you give us your workers. We'll pay you taxes on the workers. And they moved the machines there. And instead of paying people $150K a year, they basically used like Chinese slave labor. And the people got like a bowl of rice. They were forced immigrated into the cities, and they work at a factory 16 hours a day, like putting the screws in the TVs, and then the screws would be, and then the TVs would be exported to the United States over shipping containers. And they started this in Shenzhen, which was like a factory city. And the Chinese government made a bunch of money. Factory owners became billionaires. The Americans got cheap Walmart shit that's so cheap it's ridiculous. And this worked for like 20 or 30 years, right? But now the cost of labor in China is going up. It's like up. So now they have to bring the factories back because the cost of the goods is getting too high. But the workers in the US don't want to sit in a factory 16 hours a day putting stickers on an iPhone. So they on math, like like a robot. So they have to build a robot they have to build robotics basically to automate the economy. So now they're doing IoT, fourth generation, fourth industrial revolution. And they, where's that book? I think I have it here.
What's it called?
So they go to Davos. It's on my shelf. I can't find it. Anyways,
I want to know the name of the book. I want to read it.
Fourth industrial revolution.
Shoot me the name of the book later. I want to read that. But anyway,
it's like fourth industrial revolution, right? It's the new industrial revolution. So they go to Davos and they say, here's the agenda. You're going to put sensors and computers and everything. We're going to have a robotic, AI controlled workforce of like computer controlled robot drone. And you see this company. I like this company. It's in Silicon Valley, and it's like Dexter or Baxter. And they have this like $20,000 robot to like pick stuff up and move it. It's like an iPhone, an iPad for the screen.
What is that?
They're going to make these robots really cheap. They're going to be in the fast food restaurants. They're going to be stocking shelves. They're going to be in the factories. They're going to be delivering packages. So you're all the real work, the hard work's going to be done by robots, and humans are going to sit there like idiocracy, like pecking the buttons on their cell phone like a pigeon, like bring me hamburger, bring me curtains, change my bed sheets, wipe my ass, I want bananas, I want, and they're just like it's going to be idiocracy. You're going to have a touchscreen laptop hitting the buttons,
and there will be President Camacho. And that's a wrap. Keep going.
We're heading in that. We're really.
No, I know. I agree. That's crazy. No, keep going. I just had to throw that in there because this is Crypto Camacho, you know.
Crypto Camacho.
That's perfect.
So because people want they want the iPhone, they want the plasma TV, but they don't want to sit in the factory putting the 40 screws in the plasma TV. They don't want to produce what they consume. But if they don't get it, they riot basically. So anyways, it's just getting to the point of absurdity right now. And they have to build these robots that are a robot is $1 million now, or it's $100,000, and they got down 10x. And it costs $600,000 to program the robot. So they have to eliminate the programming costs. And they have to make this robot cheaper than a $300 per month. Basically, like a third world person.
Okay.
So and that's really hard to do. So they're going to basically have robots building robots, and there's going to be heavy government subsidies, and what they're trying to do now is the U.S. dollar is collapsing because all the shit was exported to China. They moved all the machines to China. The Chinese government intentionally copied all the machines that they sent over there, then started domestic production, and then started exporting everything into the international market, competing with the U.S. exports. So they have the cheap labor and they have the machines, and the U.S. has no competitive advantage anymore. And they have 3 times the population of the United States. So they're screwed. They're screwed. They're going to lose. Their exports are going to fall off a cliff, and the U.S. dollar is going to collapse. So they're like, what do we do? So they're going to say, we're going to bring the production. They tried to do the TPP, and they tried to make an Asian Rim Pacific thing, trade block, where China would have huge tariffs for imports from China and free goods from the U.S. Didn't work. Fell apart. They couldn't get Philippines and the countries to ratify the TPP agreement. Fell apart. Didn't work. Now they're doing the robots, and they're going to bring the domestic production back. Then they're doing other stuff, like if the U.S. dollar starts declining, and they have to start exporting goods that China can't manufacture.
Sure.
Right now, most of the exports from imports to China that balance out the trade deficit are semiconductors.
Okay.
And the Chinese government told the local government that they have to buy like $100 billion a year of semiconductor companies. So the Chinese government starts buying up ARM through SoftBank, and they start as proxies, because the Chinese government can't buy ARM, but if they give the money to some Japanese guy and his investment fund buys it, the U.S. can't block the acquisition. And so they're buying up all these semiconductor companies, left and right, all these German robotic companies. They bought up Boston Dynamic.
Crazy.
Military robot. The Chinese government bought up Boston Dynamic, I think, through SoftBank, which is a military robotics company. And they can't stop the acquisitions because it's through a Japanese partner, and blah 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 blah. So they're trying to figure out, like, how do we stop them from buying the companies? How do we things like that? But anyways, so there's this war going on, and the Chinese government knows they're importing like $600 billion a year of semiconductors, and they said all the semiconductors in a decade will be domestically produced.
Sure.
So they're gonna here's the trade deficit. It's massively in China's favor, and they're gonna make it even worse. So then, like, they're gonna get rid of all the imports that they need, and they're gonna maximize their exports. So the U.S. is screwed.
Well,
they're in a currency war with China right now. So they're gonna roll out these robots. They're gonna bring the production back to the United States. They're going to, like, go into Africa and try to get all these resources and open up Africa and build up infrastructure. They're going to try to get market access in Africa so they can have a market that keeps growing.
A bigger market.
They're going to build space-based industries. So in the United States, there's like dozens of privately owned spaceports. They passed a law. Before, everything in space was like communist. It was like it belongs to everyone.
Sure.
And now they passed a law saying if you grab like an asteroid, you own it. It's yours now. And so there's these guys like, hey, that asteroid has $100 trillion of gold in it. I'm gonna go get one of those asteroids.
That's crazy.
And you have this guy who owns Amazon called Jeff Bezos. He has this company, Blue Origin. You have Elon Musk doing like these Falcon, like, let's lift 150 tons into orbit and come back down and do it again. And you have this Bigelow hotel billionaire guy doing inflatable space hotels because they think space tourism is going to be the big thing, and they're going to get the space hotels. And Jeff, this billionaire, and Jeff's rockets are going to get us the space hotel, and they're going to stay in Bigelow's rocket, and they're going to have and then Trump's going to buy a space hotel. And he's got like the Trump.
So
Trump
that
power in space, and
so I knew that was going to come up, and I was going to ask you. So that brings us to Trump. I mean, is he a figurehead, or is he actually making a difference? You think? I mean, with all of this going on, and obviously there's a trade war going on, and I mean,
he's doing a good job. His job sucks. I would not want him to be in his position because if you do this, you're gonna get fucked, and you do this, you're gonna get fucked.
Either way.
There's no solution to these problems. There's no solution. But so you're stuck in the middle of a bunch of people like fighting each other, and it's not only the Chinese fighting the U.S., it's also inside of the U.S. they're all fighting each other. There's not one group. Like this group wants cheap Chinese steel, but this group says that we don't want to buy all the steel for our naval carriers from China because if we have a war, they're going to not going to export the steel for us so we can build battleships to fight them. So we need domestic steel. But the domestic steel is more expensive, and the people paying for the steel don't want to pay for the more expensive domestic steel. So they're fighting each other over, because one guy wants a low price and the other guy has a national security mandate. And so there's no solution. You do this guy wins. You do this here's the winner and the loser. So the choices you're choosing winners and losers. It's not like a win-win happy utopia like where everyone's dancing around in a circle. Like this guy will lose $100 billion if you do that, and you have to do it. And he's not going to be happy about it. He's going to fight you and attack you in the media, and he's going to do anything he can to undermine you.
No, that's wild. I mean, we could keep talking. I mean, we keep going. Go ahead, make your point.
So the most important thing though is when the trade imbalance starts getting really bad, they have to start introducing new shit to export. So they're like, okay, we're going to do space tourism. It's going to be a new export. Okay, we're going to lead the space privatization. We're going to. Did you see Lockheed Martin? They developed a fusion reactor that's going to sits in a cargo crate, and then Goldman Sachs invested. They spun off this fusion reactor. and then Goldman Sachs invested like $700 million for a fusion reactor. So wait, they have fusion reactors.
Yeah.
This was probably developed like 40 years ago.
Sure.
I swear, it's not new.
Sure.
But they say, okay, yeah, we're gonna need that.
They're gonna spin it some way. We're gonna need that for the space tourism, space race. It's really interesting.
So the thing is, they're gonna give you this fusion reactor, and it's gonna be cheaper than coal. And they're gonna say you can't burn coal because CO2 is bad, and they're gonna make you buy $700 ton carbon.
Well, that's the whole green that's the whole green revolution and whatnot. I mean,
bullshit.
Imagine
that Lockheed Martin introduced these fusion reactors, right? Or like Goldman Sachs, right?
Yeah.
And the fusion reactors are as cheap as a coal power plant, and they're a shipping container, right? The company that makes them is the only one that's gonna have the replacement parts.
Yep.
So you're gonna, instead of buying all the coal, you're gonna be buying the parts from the company, and they're gonna be a huge company the size of GE just making repair parts for all of these things, and then all the countries can say, oh yeah, we reduced our CO2 levels.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a scam. Like you got the Green Lobby and this guy and the National Security State, and they all get together and they figure out how they can make the most money out of all this. They have a problem, and the solution is what's going to stuff the most money into their pockets.
Right.
And so they're coming out with all of this like crazy stuff that I thought would never, ever like, oh, they're going to release that. And like, why did they release that 40 years ago?
Right.
But now that they have this trade imbalance, they have to start producing shit that they can export.
It's strategic, I mean, it's strategic for the profiteers,
The big secret for the military is when you have like an F-35 or a fighter jet, you sell someone a fighter jet for $10 million.
Sure.
And they actually give the country a loan to buy the military equipment.
Sure.
And then the country pays back the loan in oil and resources. And if they don't have the military equipment, they get invaded by their neighbor. So they have to buy the weapons.
Yeah.
But the F-30, these aircraft, $10 million aircraft, really cheap. But to fly the aircraft costs $10,000 an hour in fuel and repair parts. And there's only 3 companies that can manufacture the repair parts.
Yeah.
So you end up spending $70 million on the repair parts of this aircraft over the 30-40 year lifetime.
Yeah.
So they actually they're like a car dealership. The car companies lose money.
Yeah.
They make money giving car loans, and they make money on the interest of the car loans, and they make money on the dealership replacing the parts.
Yeah.
And the military export of the weapons is the same thing.
Yeah.
They make money on the repair car, replacement, training. They'll actually like give a country a bunch of helicopters they can't use, and then they try to fly the helicopters, and they realize it costs $5,000 an hour in repair parts.
Yeah, and
to keep the helicopters operating.
It just kind of completes the cycle. I mean, it just keeps that cycle going on a different front, from a different narrative, from a different leader, essentially, or a different media company.
But that keeps the U.S. empire pumped up.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what keeps the currency. They have to maintain their balance of import and export.
Yeah.
And they're going to do that any way they can. And so what's really exciting is like we got the iPhone and the iPad, and we got some like cool electronics and VR goggles, and we had a lot of consumer entertainment tech. But for the first time in like 20 years, we're actually getting like new energy sources, new electric motors, awesome. Household robotics, like Roombas, these things that can like grab stuff and eventually like cook. Like the Baxter robot in 10 or 20 years, it might be able to cook like an omelet or something.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
How is
getting all these?
How is AI going to play into this? Like for example, like the like Singularity Net, right? You probably heard of that from Ben Gertzel, I think it is. I mean, how is that all going to play into this? I mean, it seems like that would be kind of at the forefront. Something
AI
maybe not that company, but
yeah. So if I have 20 household robots, I have 20 Roombas.
Yeah.
I have a robot to go. I have a robot delivering shit to my house. I have a robot mowing my lawn.
Yeah.
I have a robot. I have a robot like laying bricks and digging ditches, and I have robot construction, and I have all these. I have 1,000 sensors, right? Visual sensors, image sensors, lidar sensors, radar sensors. I have batteries, and you have to be like recharged. I have like motors. Is the motor working? And you have to know like, is the motor working? What is the error? What is the tolerance? Does it need to be repaired? I'm gonna have hundreds of thousands of motors, hundreds of thousands of sensors, and thousands of robots. And they have to
a shitload of data
cooperatively. And you give the robot a goal, like build me this house, or dig this ditch, or pour this concrete, or cook me an omelet, or fold this clothing. and you don't want to sit there having to write a computer program to fold every single shirt Like, here's how you fold a polo shirt. Here's how you fold a t-shirt. Oh, that algorithm doesn't work for this shirt because the shirt is 24 centimeters instead of 23 centimeters.
Sure.
And the robot folds the shirt wrong. The robot needs to be able to learn how to grab the shirt and through trial and error, figure out how to fold the polo shirt.
Yeah.
And if it folds it wrong, it needs to unfold the shirt and do it again until it figures out how to fold the shirt.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a human programmer who costs $150,000 a year, have a team of 6 programmers trying to write one function to figure out how to fold this polo shirt and another function to fold a different polo shirt, a different color polo shirt, the same polo shirt, a different color. And the robots need to be able to understand what they're doing. They need to be able to accomplish goals, and they need to be able to learn from experience, because the programming costs, I could give you the robots for free, and they would still be more expensive than hiring a person to fold the shirt if you have to pay for programmers to program a shirt folding algorithm.
Until they can self-program. Until they can
self-program. So the AI is about reducing the cost. You tell the robot what you want. Pick this thing up, put it over there. Pick it up from this bin, put it in this bin. And then it figures out, oh, I'm supposed to pick this thing up that looks like this and put it over there. And if it drops, if it rolls, it'll just grab it and, oh, I failed. Okay, try again.
Yeah.
And you need what's called robustness. You need the ability to recover from errors in the programming. Errors in the task, drop the screw's in the wrong orientation. If the screws are all in the same orientation and they're on a grid and they're exactly positioned to within 100th of a millimeter, and you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you can do that with a robot. But if it has to recognize the object, see that it's an object, grab the object, deal with any errors and different orientations of the same object, and then put it in a known specific orientation into another bin, that, it turns out, takes $300,000 of software and equipment and scanners.
Wow.
And they want to get that down to 20,000 and then eventually to 5,000. Eventually, they're gonna have like neural chips on the cell phone that do object recognition. So if you have a screw and you rotate a screw, that chip is going to recognize the screw in the image, tell the camera where the screw is, and even if you rotate the screw, it'll still know that it's screw, and it'll be able to highlight the screw and just pick out the screw. It'll be able to pick out human faces, cars, cats, windows. And there's chips that'll process data like a human brain, and then we'll give a motor and with an arm, and we'll be able to grab things, and then it'll be able to figure out if it grabbed it through tactile feedback, and then it'll be able to place it in a thing, and then it'll know if it's correct, if it did the correct thing, and it'll keep trying until it succeeds.
Yeah.
And it'll learn, it'll improve. So that's what AI is about. It's about controlling these grids of sensors and motors in order to be able to build a more robust system that can be programmed for cheaper.
But do you think that'll
blockchain?
Oh, go ahead. I want to hear that thought. I want to hear that thought.
Skycoin is doing IoT projects, and we are doing industrial automation projects.
Okay.
And we do have pilot projects in this area. I don't like calling it AI, though.
Sure.
I don't like calling it AI.
I mean,
to me, it's just computer attached to some sensor and a computer attached to a motor, and it's just a computer program running the thing.
I mean, it seems like that over time would become an export, but there's another piece to the whole puzzle, which is maybe another topic and a little bit off topic, but it's about, synthetic genomics, right? Synthetic DNA, genetics, and how we're being able to program DNA. And I've read and heard that industry is going to just explode, right? I mean, it's a little bit early on, I think, but just it's a tidal wave, and that the U.S. could actually harness that to become another economic superpower through just basically programmable DNA, right? Growing body parts, nanomedicine, all that kind of stuff.
What they're doing, it's actually, so pretend that there's this much land. We have 300 million people that are living at the American standard of living, $150,000 US dollars a year, and they're eating beef every day. They can go out and barbecue a giant steak every day in their backyard. We have this much farmland on Earth, and we can support 300 million people with this many pounds of grass-fed organic butter and high-quality grain and giant steak burgers, right? If there's 300 million people on Earth, right? Living at that standard of living.
Yeah.
But 6 billion of those people have to live on like a bowl of rice a day, or near starvation, because there's not enough resources for that. So if we have a middle class, like a Chinese middle class, and all the Chinese middle class are making $60,000 a year, and they're going out every week to eat like a giant steak.
Yeah.
That steak is going to cost $800.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough grassland on Earth to feed that many cattle to produce that many steaks for this population. So what they're saying is we either have to get everyone eating soy,
sure,
which they're doing right now.
Which is happening.
They're doing like everyone's eating soy. They're producing mass amounts of soy, making like fake meat and chemically regurgitated meat, and they're calling it a hamburger.
Yep.
It's a fake hamburger.
Yep.
Or they're going to have to grow the steaks and vats.
Yeah.
They're going to have to produce they're going to take raw chemical feedstock and they're going to produce high quality food products at a quality higher than our current level, at a lower cost, in an unlimited quantity.
Yeah.
So we can only produce this much grass-fed organic butter, but we can produce an infinite amount of margin, because margin is just food coloring and vegetable oil.
Yeah.
So if we want to produce 100 billion tons a year of margin, we can do that.
Yeah.
But we can't produce 100 billion tons of grass-fed organic, butter with free-range cows. You know, so this biotech revolution is about producing the food that's going to feed the masses at this level. So we're going to this global middle class where you might have up to 2 billion people living at the standard that the U.S. enjoyed since the end of World War II.
Yeah, which is great.
And it is mathematically impossible to provide the resources to that number of people at that standard of living, but the population demands it. And some countries, if you have a food shortage, they'll say, "Oh, well, I'll get you the resources. Let's go to war," and they'll go in and they'll invade the neighboring country to get the oil and the resources and the slave labor that they need to support their population at this level. Because historically, like, you needed labor, you needed food, you needed this, you needed iron, you needed gold. You'd go and you'd get a band together and you'd raid your neighbor, you'd kill the man, you'd take the women as trophies, you'd steal all their shit, take their food, and then enslave them to produce food for you. And then the slave owners would sit there like living like kings, get their butt wiped by slaves they just captured, and they would and the slaves are doing all the farming, and they're just sitting there eating and all day and partying or whatever. And that's how human society worked. Is you always needed a slave population to produce all the good things, and so that you could live a life of leisure. And now, for the first time, we have the machines increasing the industrial production, and then the stuff was exported to the third world. And now the labor is being exported to. The labor is actually being exported. Was exported to the third world, and now it's being replaced by machine labor, by actual full-on robotics. Like, I think technologically we had the ability as a civilization to automate all industrial production, even in the 1980s.
I'm sure, yeah.
But they chose not to do that. They chose not to do it. They said it would create social instability. Now they're doing it, and the problem is that you have resource constraints. We're going to have unlimited labor. We're going to have you can have 100,000 robots to whatever you want. We're going to have unlimited labor. We're going to have unlimited energy. The Lockheed Martin is going to build a fusion reactor, whatever, and the Goldman Sachs is going to fund it. We're going to, but we're not going to have unlimited grassland. We're not going to have unlimited organic butter. We're not going to. There's not going to be unlimited steel. The cost of resources is going to go up a lot. We're going to get massive scaling limits when you go to this type of civilization. And there's going to be wars that are going to break out over just water. I don't have water. You have to invade the neighboring country just to get water. It's going to be people in some areas. If you want to shower, they're going to be like buying like a bottle of water and showering with it, because the shower's going to cost $20. Because they have this many people and this much water. So it's like, so the world we're living in or moving into isn't necessarily going to be utopia. But like, you fix one problem and it causes another problem. But for Skycoin, we're focused on. So there's these Fortune 500 companies. They want to go into Africa, and there's no infrastructure. They don't have a supply chain. They don't have delivery. They don't have networking. So they're coming to us and they're saying, "Hey, can you do internet in Africa?" But we can 300 miles, 50 kilobytes per second. We can wire up the rural villages. Can you build they want decentralized shops that are peer-to-peer replicated, because in the first world we take it for granted that the internet's on 24/7, and so you access a website, the packet goes to the other side of the earth, and then it comes back. In Africa, the internet can go down for a day. So they want to have you have a local store. It'll cache the data and replicate it peer-to-peer, and it'll update opportunistically. And you can still access the store or a copy of the latest data in the store, even if the internet's down. So they want they want everything asynchronous. They want to build up like supply chain and hire people to deliver things, and you order something in your village, and then they subcontract to someone else in the village to go pick it up, to go to the town, the distribution center, and then bring it to you. They want to get market access into Africa, which requires networking, social networks, communication medium, supply chain logistics, and they're asking us to build that infrastructure on the ground. And the companies are funding the UN and the World Bank and the things to go in and do that. And and then this guy at the UN looked at Skycoin and he said, "Oh my God, this is what we wanted. We want this." And he made this like 30-minute video about the Skycoin and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which is how are we going to bootstrap infrastructure in Africa. And then the Fortune 500 is funding this because they want market access. They want people buying Nestle cookies, and they want people buying Nestle tea, and they want to sell them laundry detergent. But if someone doesn't have a washer and dryer, they're not buying laundry detergent. You have to get them electricity first, and then you have to get them a washer and dryer, and then they start buying your laundry detergent. So they actually have to build up the economy to get them to start buying all of the stuff that the corporations want to sell to them. So we have the mesh networking and the decentralized internet and the peer-to-peer replicated websites. And so as soon as we finished that technology and we sort of started doing the pilots, all these people started coming to us and said, "We want this, and can you do this over here? And can you do this over here?" And the government started coming to us. And so I like the robots, and I like the automation, and the fusion reactors are really nice, but most of the growth, I think economic growth, and where the biggest opportunity for us is going to be, isn't going to be in the developing world. It's going to be in Africa, it's going to be in Southeast Asia, and it's going to be where we can build the infrastructure and own the infrastructure.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's been a really, really fascinating conversation. I mean, I could keep going and going and talking about this stuff for forever. I mean, I want to be respectful of your time, of course, and I do want to ask a couple kind of rapid fire questions to you. But I mean, it does amaze me though that the price of Skycoin is so low. I mean, obviously, I don't want to get into speculating on price, but after this conversation, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't be bullish on Skycoin. I mean, just given the infrastructure, the ecosystem you're building, the level of depth that it has, and the ability to touch so many different areas of the economy, and really you're doing that in one kind of platform, one ecosystem, and I think that's huge. I mean, that's more than Bitcoin ever delivered, right? It's more than, I'd say, almost all the cryptocurrencies combined have delivered, right? I mean,
there's only 5 platforms. There's really only 5 coins that are really investment grade, and everything else is speculation.
I mean, one question I do want to ask, and you could touch on it quickly, or you could avoid the question or the answer, but Bitcoin Core, right, versus Bitcoin Cash. It definitely seems like Bitcoin BTC is kind of the walking dead. It's going down. Bitcoin Cash is being funded by Jihan Wu, Bitmain, Roger Ver, Craig Wright. How is that going to play out, right? Because they got the name Bitcoin. How do you see that playing out?
They bought the domain. Okay, here's the chessboard. They bought Bitcoin.com, Bitcoin.org. You go to Bitcoin.org to install Bitcoin, and they give you a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and someone sends you Bitcoin. You're like, "Where's my Bitcoin?"
Exactly.
And I'm like, wait, oh yeah, Bitcoin Cash, and people are so confused. So the government, the U.S. Bitcoin is supposed to be a global currency with one giant currency. If Bitcoin did not screw up and they did everything correct and they reinvested into building up the platform and fixing all the problems, Bitcoin could have been the global currency that took over from the U.S. dollar. But that didn't happen. What happened was people took their money, they didn't invest anything back into Bitcoin. No development. The development just stopped. Years ago, basically. Some little features were added, but not anything new. They didn't fix the fundamental problems because the miner oligarchy and special interests stopped them from doing it. Bitmain got control of the mining power, and Bitmain says, "You get 20% hashing, you get 23, and I get 30." And Bitmain divides up the hashing power among the 3 Chinese mining pools, like a mafia. And then Bitmain, who should be supporting Bitcoin, says, "Hey, wait, we have all this money from our mining. Let's create a shitcoin pump and dump." And they go and they hire Roger Ver, and they try to split Bitcoin into Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And there's Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin XT, Bitcoin 2X, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin. I can't even remember. There's like 60 forks of Bitcoin. So what they did was all those died. No one cares. But what Bitmain did, since Bitmain controls Bitcoin, the mining power, and they reinvested into Bitcoin Cash, divided the Bitcoin community. So Bitcoin Cat, what Bitmain did is they started the destruction of Bitcoin. Because of what Bitmain is doing, Bitcoin will become fragmented and will die. We will not see the emergence of a unified global cryptocurrency to replace the US dollar. Instead, we will see fragmentation and the emergence of thousands of cryptocurrencies that are, and there will be no leader. There's going to be no dominant leader. And that is what's going to happen. And Bitcoin is dead. If you have the largest mining pool, the people producing the hardware, Bitmain, and they are fragmenting the market like this in Bitcoin, instead of promoting Bitcoin and growing it, they're dividing people.
But don't
Bitcoin is going to die from internal division.
Bitcoin will die, but don't they have the incentive to then again pump up Bitcoin Cash? It seems like they would have that incentive. They would basically shift all their assets and resources from Bitcoin.
No one will trust Bitcoin Cash.
That's true. Nobody will trust it though. Yeah, and it won't gain the
not after.
Yeah,
they're playing games too.
Yeah.
What happened is they're going to switch the mining algorithm on Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah.
And the new mining algorithm, you're only going to be able to buy Bitmain ASICs. The new Bitcoin Cash mining algorithm.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I mean it's really interesting. Really interesting. The whole. And then you see Craig Wright, who billionaire as well, which is a whole nother story. Fake Satoshi, right? I mean, gosh. All right, I'll leave it there. I mean, I don't know. We could go on and on, I'm sure. But I do want to ask a couple of really quick questions, just kind of rapid fire questions. What product have you bought like under $100 in the last 30 days that has completely helped you with cryptocurrency or without cryptocurrency? Like what is, if you know, it's okay.
I don't even know. I haven't bought anything.
That's okay. Okay, and then second question is, are there any?
I bought a Logitech mouse. That was really helpful.
Logitech mouse. That's perfect. $10, $9.99.
Not with Bitcoin, though, with cash.
That's true. I bought Bitcoin. Okay. And then the next question is, are there any books that you're either currently reading that you would recommend, or any books that you've recently read that you'd recommend? Cryptocurrency related or not? Just curious.
There's a book by Atali called A Brief History of the Future, and I think it's one of my favorite books because he just hit everything that we're seeing in the world 20 years later. He just hit it on the head. He is just a prophet. Like, even in this book, they mentioned Bitcoin.
Wow.
It's there's another book that's very interesting, like on the libertarian slant, called Sovereign Individual. Okay. And this book I think it was made in the 80s or 90s, and they talk about Bitcoin. And what they say is that the governments will collapse because the government will not be able to tax people. Like, if I can keep all my money in Bitcoin, I have a factory and I have all these robots, why am I going to put I'm going to put my factory where I don't have to pay taxes.
You're going to opt out.
All my money in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Why am I going to pay taxes?
You're going to opt out of the system. Yeah,
I'm going to get out of the system. So all the rich people are going to move offshore, and they're going to these billionaires right now are talking about building seasteads. Wow. To not pay taxes. Yeah. So they're going to build their own freaking little island countries and just float out there. They're so you're eventually going to have, and I say, well, it's never going to happen. That's crazy. And I'm watching it. It's happening. It's actually happening. They're doing it.
Okay. And then
so that book is very, very interesting, but I think it's a bit extremist. I think it's a libertarian slant, whereas I started from being very libertarian, like Rob Paul, like libertarian, to being more pragmatist, because the world is it's a lot more complicated. There's not an easy solution to a lot of problems. No, but I still like that book a lot.
Okay, yeah, no, that's great. I want to check those out for sure. And one other rapid fire question: if you had, and again, you don't have to answer this, but if you had $1,000 to invest, what cryptocurrency would you buy other than Skycoin? Like, it could be anything. Like, what has the most potential? Again, putting you on the spot, so you don't have to answer, but I think it would be insightful.
I look at coins that have a long-term user growth. Like Skycoin has 1% user growth per day, so the price goes up about 1% per day. It can go up.
That's good to know. Yeah, that's
go down, goes up, goes down, but it goes up. Mostly up.
Sure.
And I look for that growth trend. And in the last 2 years, all I've seen is pump and dumps. I have not seen a single coin that has had long-term, sustainable growth rate in the users. Every person that came into the crypto community in the last 2 to 4 years, especially the last 2 years, was just like scammer who's like, oh, the public will give me $150 million for this ICO, and I don't do anything. And you saw Trezos, like I sometimes I had a nightmare, and I'm like, why didn't I just raise $600 million like the Trezos guys that are fired? Why am I building this software? Why am I doing all this work when they got like 4 times as much money as I did, and they didn't do anything?
Your day will come.
Like, why?
It will come.
Why am I suffering? Why am I making myself suffer?
Yeah.
It will come.
It will come. You're building the infrastructure, and that's going to be a lot more powerful. But anyway, go on. I mean,
but can you imagine? And one of the things that I saw these projects like Arc and Lisk and the developers, and I had one of the developers of one of the platforms come to my house like 3 a.m. like drunk, and he's like crying. He's like, this whole market is a scam, and you can't you have to do what you have to, and if you want to succeed, you have to do what the other coins are doing. Like you have to be like the scam coins, and if you want to be listed on this exchange, you have to let them invest $50 million at an extremely low market price thing, and then they'll pump it and dump the coins on the public. And if you don't play the game, they're not gonna, if you want to get in, you have to do what they say, and you should, and you have to abandon your ideals. And I'm like, what the heck? He's just like crying, like, and because the market just became a game to make money. And there was a point when you could invest $1 in any ICO and you could make $5,000.
Yeah.
There was a point.
Wild.
And we're past that point. And then there was a point where the public couldn't make any money, but if you bought 90% pre-sale, you could dump the coins in the public and make 10 extra money.
Yeah.
Then we came to a point where even the people buying 90% off were getting screwed because other people were getting 50x off.
Yeah.
We're getting like at 2% of the cost.
Yeah.
Where the founders of the company were giving themselves 30% of the coins and pretending like you were getting a 10% buying the coins 90% off, and you're gonna make all this money if you give me your Bitcoin because we're giving you the coins 90% off. So all you have to do is wait for us to listen on Binance so you can dump your coins, and then and then you find out that this other guy has 30% of the coins and he's gonna dump more than you, and then there was a point where now you cannot even make money. I see billionaire Silicon Valley venture capitalist insider guys getting scammed left and right on these shit coins. And they're like, he invested, and this billionaire, he found a Netscape and whatever. He'd never get scammed. He's been doing this for 20 years, and we background checked him, and blah, blah. And they're like, no, he got scammed. Then I talked to one guy who invested in this ICO, and he's like, ooh, dodged a bullet. He only lost like 70,000. He's like, I was gonna invest $5 million. He's like, ooh, dodged a bullet. And he's like sweating, and he's like, whew. Like he was like, he felt relieved that he only lost like $100,000 instead of losing like $5 million. And so I see these people that are veteran, like these people are sharks. Yeah. They're the ones doing the fucking. These aren't the guys getting fucked. These are the guys fucking the other people the last 30 years, and they are getting screwed left and right. And they're it's actually funny because their logos are on all these shitcoin ICOs now, and they
yes, I've started seeing that. I've started seeing that.
Yeah.
I have. You see these big name logos.
Like, how do we shut this down quietly without us making us look bad?
Yeah.
Like.
So yeah. Go ahead.
It's really difficult now, and so, but it's good for us because the number of honest projects and the number of people actually building anything instead of trying to run off with money is becoming infinitesimal, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't even say like some of these aren't even scams. Like you look at Dentacoin, they get a coin, they do an ICO, they get like 5 dentists. They say, oh yeah, Dentacoin. Like you can pay them in Bitcoin. Why do I need a freaking coin to pay my dentist? Right? But they pump it to $5 billion.
Yeah.
And then they dump the coins, and then the next week it's 300 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they'll do another coin, and another coin, and another coin. I've seen some guys, same team, same ICO group launch 50 ICOs.
That's crazy.
And every time there is 20 million, 10 million, 5 million. They're not spending any time actually building out these coins.
Oh no.
And the way that you get rich on the coin is if you have a community and you have developers that are investing in the coin, and if the community is growing at 1% per day, and the utility and intrinsic value of the coin is increasing.
Yeah.
And the number of coins that actually meet that criteria is like there's less than 3 coins.
Yeah.
In the current market, if you go down the top list of 200 coins, you're going to find just a couple, less than a dozen that you can publicly identify. But then if you actually know the internals of the people, and you know what's going on inside the market, like me, and you go to the conferences, you talk to the people, and you get all the dirt, then there's less than 3 coins that I would seriously consider to be legitimate at this point.
Yeah, no, let that be a lesson. I mean, that's for everybody watching. I mean, that's a really, really insightful. I mean, really, really interesting. I think everybody's going to really just benefit from that and appreciate that a lot. And all the
you have to have your own blockchain. You have to have software developers, and you have to have a reason for people to use the coins. If you don't have those 3 things, you're shit coin. You go down the top 200, and you will find less than 10 coins that meet that criteria. No,
that's a really good, even just those 3 things. I mean, just those 3 things can, I think, help people tremendously, that they may not have even known. So I think that's awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Synth. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we've gone way over, probably time than we should have, but I've had a really good time talking to you, really good, fascinating conversation with you. I want to leave you with one last question. I promise, a 1-word answer.
I can go another 2 hours.
No, I can too, but I do want to be respectful of your time, even though I really appreciate you, offering that. Maybe we could do it again sometime. Would be fun to have another conversation. But I just want to know if there's one person in the crypto community that you respect, admire, and that other people should follow and watch, or just, who would that be? Like, who's not a scam art? Like, who can? And it could be anybody. Okay. It could be a developer. It could be anybody.
There's personality cult people like Vitalik, and they're like the public face, right?
Sure, of course.
Then there's developers like G Maxwell and SIPA, and they're not in the public evangelizing things.
Sure.
He's very quiet doing work. G Maxwell, I think, is the one I respect the most.
G Maxwell.
He's the reason Bitcoin hasn't died yet. And when he leaves Bitcoin, Bitcoin is going to die.
Okay.
And I could go. Actually, I could start on that. That'd be like another 30 minutes. I'll tell you why that was. But I've seen the community dynamic, and I've seen that there's 2 or 3 people that hold back the idiots from destroying Bitcoin. And when those people are gone, the mob is going to come in and just trash Bitcoin. It's going to and these are the people that kept Bitcoin sane. They're the people that held back the idiots. And there's constantly 500 idiots trying to add this and add that and destroy this and do this. And there's 1 or 2 people in Bitcoin that kept it going to get to the point where we are now, where we can have other coins carry on the torch for Bitcoin. And I think for the developer, G Maxwell is I think #1.
Awesome.
I also like Luke Jr. He's sort of crazy. But I like Luke Jr.
Luke Jr. G Maxwell. Okay.
Yeah. But for the investment leaders, people who actually tell you invest in this coin, I don't think there's any substitute for doing your own research. I don't.
Sure.
If there was a guy who just says buy this coin and you buy it and you get rich, there's gonna be. Were a few people like that who called it really early on, and now whenever they say buy this coin, the price goes up 3x in one day, and then it crashes to 30% of what the price was before.
Yeah.
Because you're never the inside information. If you go out to the public and you give insider information to the public, it's no longer insider information.
Yeah.
And so there is a really small group of people that understand the market and who's doing what, and I don't know anyone. I can't name one person in the public who really is a crypto insider. Who has time for it? I do the interviews and I go to the conferences and I do the thing and I do the development. I don't feel like even spending 16 hours a day that I have enough time to keep track of what's going on.
Yeah.
Like you can even figure out like who's that guy, and now there's a Japanese group. There's a Chinese group. There's a Korean group.
That's right.
There's multiple U.S. groups. There's not a dominant U.S. group, and there's not and in Europe, I don't even know if there's groups. It's very fragmented.
No, that's good. I'll check out some of those guys. Some G Maxwell, Luke Jr. And then I mean, I just like to follow those kind of people. The glue that holds it together. The people that actually make a difference, that aren't just on Twitter pumping and dumping and shilling and whatever. So okay. Well, cool. Oh yeah, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I don't know. I don't know how to say this. I got to get in trouble. There's that billionaire guy who had the 2 or 3 hours that were secretly recorded and that was leaked to the media in China recently, and I would definitely follow up on that because a lot of the things that he said are really just trading insights. And a lot of the insiders, we know that, and I would never be caught saying that in public. I would be crucified.
Yeah.
But he said it, so I could say, "Oh, look what he said."
He said it. He said it. But
I have a lot of private conversations about that. But some of the stuff he said, I can't say.
What's his name? Do you know?
It's a Chinese. It's like Chinese.
I'll look it up. It's a Chinese billionaire who. Yeah. Okay. I will figure that out. But you didn't say it. He said it. But very interested to find out what he says. But good insight.
And it's funny too, because a lot of times you invest in this coin and you're like, and you go in the thing and you own like 10% of this coin and you're like, this coin's a complete scam. But wait, why are you saying it's a scam? Don't you own 10%? Didn't you fund that ICO and didn't you get that listed on? Aren't you one of the advisors? I'm like, yeah, it's a scam.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. That's the point. I know the whole story. I know how it's all going to unfold, which is why I invested. $10 million in the first place, right? That's the nature of the game. That's crazy. Well, that actually begs the question then. What is no? I won't even go there.
What isn't a scam?
Yeah, no.
But we started out being very idealistic and doing, we're going to save the world. We're going to save everyone from all the banks. We're going to free the people from the evil, Federal Reserve. And then it became about making money. And then this year, people started becoming jaded. They started becoming cynical. And they started seeing human greed. Like, I got kidnapped by my market. Like, I got threatened, death threats, robbed. And you start seeing people start acting like animals because of money. And then so this is the start. We went full cycle from greed, from idealism, to greed and corruption. And we're starting at the beginning of the cycle again. And in a year, we're going to be back to idealism, where crypto is about not the money and not getting rich. And if it succeeds, you'll get rich, of course. Sure. But it's about the impact of what you're building has on the world. Yeah. It's about what does it do? Not just, can I buy this and pump it and make some money and get a Lambo and some hot girls. It's about, are people actually going to use this, and is it going to improve their life? So if the technology goes from being about idealism to pragmatism, and then about money and corruption, and now we're starting the idealism cycle again. Gotcha. So I hope it's a cycle, because if it just keeps going in the current direction, it's just going to die.
It's going to die, yeah.
So,
wow.
So I'm seeing new coins coming out and new projects that are more focused on humans, and what the technology is going to do for their lives, instead of just being about pumping and dumping.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Actually, very good, optimistic note and an optimistic way to end the conversation here. I mean, I think everybody's waiting for some optimism. I think that's great. The market's been down. I'm sure a lot of people watching have lost some money. I think a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen next, but I think that's a good way to put it, that the optimism hopefully is coming back. Hopefully things will start ramping up. But thank you so much, Synth. I have had an awesome time with you. Just great conversation. I'd love to do this again, like I said. But thanks so much for taking the time to do this. And if you want to do it again too, you let me know. We'll let's keep in touch. Okay. Any parting words or any last things you want to say to anybody watching?
Buy Skycoin.
Buy Skycoin right now. And on that note, let's pump and dump. No, just kidding. But no, Skycoin does definitely seem like a very undervalued cryptocurrency, at least in my mind after this conversation, especially. I mean, the utility is there. The utility times multiples, times 10, times 100 compared to these other coins. I mean, you could see that, you could feel that, you could see that just in your passion for the project. And so I think the people will see that come through too. So cool. Well, thank you, Synth, again, and we will talk next time.
Yes. All right. Let's do this again. All right. Great.
All right. See you later. Thanks. Talk to you later.